Good evening and welcome to the
Ryan, turn your volume down.
March 6th,
I think
2023 Select Board meeting. Tonight we'll be meeting jointly with the Board of Health and the Finance Committee. The agenda will be the following. It's a short agenda, but perhaps a long meeting. We will have a joint meeting with the Finance Committee and the Board of Health regarding the establishment of the Littleton Department of Health. A presentation from the Chair, Mr. Baker. We will then get into the finance, capital and operating budget discussions with the hope of finalizing at this evening, and we're getting close. And then we will adjourn. So I guess you guys can call your meetings to order if you want. I think I kind of just did, but I think you guys can do that as well. Everybody has a quorum.
Yeah, sure. So I declare the March 6th, 2023 Finance Committee joint meeting with the Select Board and Board of Health open.
And I declare the March 6th, 2023, 6:30 joint meeting with the Finance Committee and Select Board as well.
Right. Well, I want to hand it off to the town administrator, Mr. Insaldi, just to kind of go over in a little more detail how we're going to go about this tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. So, as you said, this is the final budget presentation to the Board of Health. We've heard from everybody else, I believe. So they're here to make their budget presentation before both boards, and then upon the conclusion, go back into the dialogue after and go through the entire budget and give you an update on some of the latest developments that seem to keep popping up, and then from there we can talk about the whole budget.
Okay, so there won't be a need. We don't keep you guys here all night because that could. So we'll let you go first, and then we'll. Any questions? We'll have our two boards and then we'll let you guys adjourn if you wish.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Baker. I'm the chair of the Littleton Department of Health, and I'm here with the board, Gina Fratelli, Matt Wason, Dan Kane, and Kevin Davis. Thank you for taking the time to hear us this evening. We're all very busy, so we'll get into it. The June 2021 town, the town voted unanimously to approve Article 35, authorizing the withdrawal from the Neshoba Associated Boards of Health and take any other action in relation thereto. Fast forward to today, we're here to ask you for help in implementing the will of the town. Next slide, please. So currently, we are exiting the Neshoba Associated Boards of Health on June 30th, 2023. The FY24 cost for the Neshoba Associated Boards of Health Nursing and Environmental Services, which we utilize, is roughly $49,602. There are some additional administrative and operational costs to run the department, which total somewhere around $70,000 in total. In this model, the Neshoba Associated Board of Health retains all the fees associated with this department. We have had an unsuccessful recruitment campaign for the public health coordinator position, which we agreed upon as boards and have that job description qualified. We had few qualified candidates, and the top two candidates declined the second interview due to the large scope of work for the role and the insufficient salary. We've been sort of pushed away from the idea of the public health coordinator, as discussed, because frankly, no one else does it this way. We have found a highly qualified candidate expressing interest in the health director position in the Littleton Department of Health. And we see the potential to align a health department with industry standards, best practices, and to do the best we can for the residents of Littleton. Moving forward, time is of the essence. We've already adopted the Department of Health fee schedule for FY24. We've formalized the revenue stream for the department, utilizing historical and forward-looking data. Thank you, Mr. Dolovich, for your assistance in that. And we've established, the revenue forecast, and now we're asking for your help to finalize the budget and approve the job description so we may move forward and implement the will of the town with the best possible results. I'll turn it over to Vice Chair Wason to discuss the organization, budget, and timeline in depth.
So briefly, this is what we see kind of coming out of the gate. We have our Board of Health already and nothing else below it at this time. We're saying if we structure it with a health director, And then kind of to launch, have at least nursing services with a public health nurse, which that recruitment is also ongoing, as well as some administrative support, which we are currently sharing with land use. And kind of really long-term projection, next please, looking out 10 years, other communities around, what could we grow into? This is just kind of the roadmap to say, well, eventually we'll probably end up with a larger administrative support bucket. We'll end up with more community outreach program. We'll probably grow the nursing services. We put in the school nurses under there right now as a possibility, as well as the inspection services. As the town grows, we're going to need more sanitarians, as well as food inspectors and soil inspectors, et cetera. So we envision the department growing. Now, is it going to get to this many boxes? Not necessarily, but we kind of wanted to show what this could become and what some other communities do. Next, please. So the budget we've built out so far is based primarily upon quantities from the Neshoba Associated Boards of Health as what numbers they do provide us in terms of inspections and reviews and plans, as well as, again, kind of our own history from Littleton as to land use and building permits, et cetera. They go hand in hand pretty well so that we can outline the revenue. We have the whole exhaustive fee schedule, which we're not going to show you right now because we'll all glaze over. But we've got to bracket out into one-time fees and annual fees. This is FY24 numbers right now. So one-time fees are those inspections, new septic systems, replacement systems, all the startup kind of costs. And then the annual fees are the routine. Every restaurant's going to have their annual fee, every food cart, et cetera. So these do kind of span out over about 4 or 5 years at about these rates, just because of the building that's planned at this time a little bit. And so we're feeling pretty good about those revenue projections. And then on the expense side, this would be FY24. So it's that earlier org chart. So we're saying, let's get the health director in place. Let's get the public health nurse in place. And then we need some dollars for administrative support. And then as we build out those other kinds of fees that go with that. So the net here is about 38 positive. That number is kind of bounced around as we looked at different salary levels. We, for example, were already kind of informed by somebody that we probably weren't posting our public health nurse at the rate that you need in order to get somebody hired. So we're trying to adjust those numbers.
Yeah, can I ask just a question?
You bet.
Excuse me, that's for how much of an FTE for the nurse there?
That's 4 hours. So
I believe the position's at 19 hours, of which we really only utilize 2 hours a month now.
So 20,000 for a basically half-time position?
Not benefit eligible, it sounds like.
Correct.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought nurses made more than that. True. Okay, well.
it's for a low number of hours to start. That's
Okay.
because we utilize those services so minimally from the show.
Okay.
That's based on data right now that we're kind of receiving the services. You looked at that. Yeah.
As Kevin said, we're using 2 hours a month.
Okay.
We would love that to be more.
So if we were to hire a nurse, to Brian's point, would pay far more than that number. Would pay market rate.
No, that is the number
That is the market rate number. That's the number we're paying to show boards of health. That's not the number we would pay if we were to hire. I mean, Dan probably answers better than anybody here, right? As far as the rate.
Well, is it, I don't think with the halftime position, originally the 2024 number was 8 hours a week.
10, 11, depending on the rate.
Okay,
Right
so yeah,
around
it's not a
there. So
halftime position, it's really,
$6.1.
it's a quarter, a little bit less of an FTE, so that's 80 grand a year for a public health nurse.
It is-
That's reasonable, it's a little too reasonable. I say a little too reasonable compared to what they're gonna pay in a Lowell or a Lawrence or sometimes bigger, busier and more robust. It's got hospital pay, but public health nurses don't pay hospital pay, it's just the nature of the practice.
So next, please. So where we're at now, as Kevin mentioned, time is a bit of the essence. We've put our work into creating the health director job description. It has been voted upon and passed by the Board of Health. So we're looking to get that nailed down. We obviously then have to move forward and get the position graded, get it posted, get interviews conducted, select and hire, and The additional positions we would think would push off to after the start of FY 24, just so that that director can ideally be involved in those hires. The deadline here becomes the May 6th town meeting where we would have to decide whether we need to go back to Neshoba, because if we don't have any pieces in place, then we have no Department of Health and we have no coverage for the town. So this is tight. If we can get it posted and go through the recruitment process in April and ideally identify a candidate and get them on board in May, then we could get this wrapped up and have somebody ready to go when we depart Neshoba effective July 1st. So that's the crunch we're feeling, and that's the sense of urgency we have.
And you have a candidate that you have a candidate in mind.
We have a candidate who has expressed interest in this, who would be, at first glance, a very good candidate. They have not met the whole board yet, but
And you still have to go through the whole process.
exactly.
Understood. Gotcha.
But in all honesty, the recruitment for that prior position, we got a lot of applicants that were not very qualified for it. And I think if we actually posted a health director position, we could potentially get more candidates as well. So I would want to have the time to just make sure we cast that net and look at anybody else who might be interested.
Just on the numbers. So in the previous scenario, we were paying about $70,000 a year to be a member. And then in this scenario, we're going to net gain about 30,000 in this scenario. Correct.
I also want to make sure that we do have members on Zoom. So I know Chairman Nordhaus and I think Faulkner. Anybody else? You guys?
Not just Fred.
So if there's any questions, please just direct them and let us know.
I have another question. So, sorry. So that would be the net change now, but you had the other side that had the fully built out department. Do you have any sense of what the cost of that might be? And what would, if we went back, whatever, to Neshoba, and we wanted to provide equivalent services to that full spread out department, what might that cost? I'm just trying to see.
They would do it.
Okay,
They have their model.
Right.
okay.
Even if we want to pay more, we could.
I think the question was, what is it going to take for an internal Department of Health to provide the same level of services that we are currently receiving from Neshoba?
I think the reverse. It's I think I understand the cost difference now, but now let's speculatively, of course, go 10 years forward. We're doing it all ourselves internally. We're doing some with Neshoba and picking up the rest ourselves.
Neshoba's gone. You guys about the cost of the fully built out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Neshoba's model is that they are either they're in or they're out. They don't tend to piecemeal, they don't share responsibility, it's just too administratively challenging. So that's part of our challenge. If we pull out, we need to be able to provide our own services. If we don't, we have a 2-year commitment to them before we would be opt out again.
Just thank you. I'm understanding this better. So if we stayed with them, we could not then offer these other services.
We could, but we would not be generating any revenue. We would be coming purely out of the Littleton town pocket.
Okay.
So I jump in. So we have this model for 24. What services would we not be providing the residents this year that Neshoba does for us right now? With this staff?
Ideally, we don't have a loss of service. But that comes with the question of what is the bandwidth for this individual and this group's coming out of the gate? And are we going to have to potentially outsource some inspections? Yes, maybe. We don't know that well enough as a board.
So who do you outsource them to if Neshoba's gone?
Well, there are various contractors. Actually, the the candidate we're in touch with is a licensed sanitarian and a licensed food inspector. So if we were to hire said candidate, we wouldn't, there would be no gap in services whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I think we'd be able to provide more services, control the process a little bit better, and be able to account for everything. Whereas right now, the accounting that we receive in the show as comes to quantities, services are quite.
So I saw the original list that you guys sent out with the structure. So with one person, as health director, doing all of these inspections and permits, there's 1,800 items that you identified here in FY 24. How is one person going to be doing all that?
Great question.
Thank you.
With the implementation of the systems, the CRM, OpenGov, that we'll be able to utilize through the land use department and hopefully the Department of Health itself. We'll be able to automate a lot of those tasks, identify all invoiceable items, make sure they get tracked and accounted for, and that's the bulk of the work. Let's keep it track of them.
Can we use
Sure.
Mike?
It's so the revenue numbers, I know you said you work with Department of Land Use too. Is that your estimates? Is that all like additional revenue that the Neshoba Board of Health is getting now, or is that a combination of some inspection fees we're already getting in town?
No, that would be all information that show is captured right now.
Okay, so that's all that 200,000 plus is your estimate on net new revenue versus, okay,
I don't know their fees as well, but they're all capturing all those fees right now.
okay, right. But it's not accounting for any inspection fees we're already capturing in town.
The 70,000,
I'm sorry.
the estimate that you're saying that would be paid them now, that's not what a new contract would be. That would all have to be renegotiated if we need to.
They have an assessment that they provide us. I think the last assessment was $49,602, and then the additional funds are basically taking into account administrative services that we share with another part of the town, as well as different operational costs and postage and things like that.
Yeah, that would cost for FY 24 just shy of 50,000.
That would be up.
To Neshoba for FY 24 if we stayed. I assume it would go up a little more for year two because we have to sign a 2-year contract. And then that number is not captured in our net right now. So
Right.
our net was just based upon our expenses and revenue, but it ignores that 50,000 as well that we would not be spending as a town.
So if we're not losing any services from Neshoba, right, and we're doing everything that Neshoba is currently doing for us with this new person. When we build out a department the size of that other chart, I would imagine that the revenue stream doesn't increase because we've added bodies if we're doing everything that Neshoba is doing for us. So it becomes not a fee generating department. It's just a regular expense department.
I would expect that eventually.
Okay.
I think one of the goals is as we build that position out and we say, hire this director, and yes, maybe they're doing a lot of that boots on the ground work in year one, but the sooner we can get them not doing that kind of work and get them applying for grants and bettering our programs and reaching out to other communities to actually develop better services, that's the trajectory I want to see happen. I think saying we'll come out equal to Neshoba is the low bar. I want to be better than what we're getting from Neshoba, and therefore that's why we have to have that trajectory of get a directorate who can actually create that path forward for us.
So just to be clear, you say we should pull out in Neshoba, but then we're going to build a department so that we can collaborate with other towns? That's what you just,
But to share knowledge, share resources, share ideas, just some way to move our services up.
Are you finding a lot? I mean, a lot of the conversations we're having are around regionalization. You find like in our peer communities are towns moving away from regionalization versus towards it. I mean, is that kind of a trend in public health right now, or?
There's state money to encourage regionalization and shared services. We haven't found for instance, Showa would see a lot of that money was there. Right. They're going to share. I do feel like Littleton needs, its own, its own person, its own health director to sort of see the program through, and not someone part-time or shared, someone that really cares about Littleton and health services that its residents need.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to understand. Just sort of big picture. What I think I'm hearing is that in 10 years hence or so, the vision is to be providing a lot more services, and that the town would be paying for the staff to be providing those more services. Is that relatively accurate?
Well, I think we would be providing more services. I think we'll have a lot more residents in 10 years. I think there'll be a lot more services to be provided. I don't know that. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what the numbers would look like and what the town would be responsible for providing as far as funding goes in 10 years. I do know that with a director and someone to see the budget through could be held accountable to make sure all those numbers line up so that in the end, they reach our goals of, do we have to supplement from the town funds to run this department, or can it be self-sufficient?
Okay, just because when Steve asked the question just a minute ago, whether it would be revenue generating or, essentially a cost center, which is not a bad word.
That should be very.
Do you anticipate that? I guess. Well, I guess I'm just trying to understand. Could we just put our finance hat on and say, if it were as simple, sometimes from our point of view, or at least from my point of view, is as simple as, the department wants to provide more services, awesome, and it might cost the town X, awesome, and then we get to judge. And I'm just trying to put this in that context, just to see if I've got the context right.
If I could jump in, so just kind of down the road that Steve's going down, I think it's a little bit down the same road as Brian as well. Just start with Canada. So we're paying $50,000 right now to get the services from Neshoba. We haven't been able to quantify how much Neshoba collects on Littleton's behalf. We haven't been able to quantify that.
We have some numbers from 2020, I believe. That was the last week.
All right. And the hope is that it would in fact be revenue positive, that we would be able to cover whoever we hire to provide the services, and then so that we can grow and we can provide more services to Matt's point. That was the whole basis of why we started baking this bread, right? So I do think that that's, although the first year, maybe the first couple of years, it's going to be probably revenue neutral until we kind of get our legs under us. But I think that once we're able to figure out what they were doing, kind of, what we're able to collect and put processes and systems in place to be able to do that more efficiently, I think I'm going to use the word profit. I think it's going to be profitable. I think it's going to be a good business decision on behalf of the town.
Yeah, I think,
I think that's just the opposite of what I'm hearing, Chuck, is they said we're not losing any services and the show is providing us.
Right.
So this revenue stream that they're estimating is based on what they right now guess the show is doing for us with this one person covering. So as you add additional people under that, those services and that demand doesn't increase because we've added bodies. So it goes to Brian's point, goes from maybe a revenue generating entity like this to a cost center, which necessarily isn't a bad thing. But I don't want to be fooled by saying it's always going to be a revenue generating piece.
Yeah, if you go to that second organizational chart, there's no way that's revenue positive.
No, not at all.
That is very aspirational. That doesn't.
So I want to stick to the proposed, this one that's in front of us, and I think it's a little more, I think, palatable for us. I mean, I haven't done the research to know how big a town gets before they kind of take this on. I mean, we grow about 1,000 every 10 years population. Let's add 5,000 if we want by 2030, which would be a lot, but we know what's going on downtown. So 3,000 to 5,000, is that population enough to generate the services that are going to be required by this department? In other words, I don't know if we're comparing this to a Chelmsford, an Acton, a Westford who's got 25,000 people. Well, that's, we definitely need to be starting to talk about, hey, Boxborough, you're looking for, we'd like to partner with you. You've got an established organization now where we can share some services if you.
I don't think population is the only list.
No, not necessarily. You're right. Some of this is for sure, but restaurants and the commercial growth, which we're after. But I just don't know what that.
Gary, you bring up a good point that you need to focus on this chart
Yes.
first, because we're setting
We
a
can
budget for FY 24
Yes.
now. And if we agree to this, then they're stuck with this one person doing all those inspections and doing everything that's on that list to generate that revenue stream that you're talking about by themselves, basically, for at least a year until we get into the 25 budget cycle. So I'm wondering, to be able to do that, what's the contingency plan? So this person comes on board, they're here for 3 months, and all of a sudden they leave. What happens?
It's not send Maryland out on inspections.
Right.
Well, you've got a special town meeting in front, right?
I mean, where's it up? Neshoba won't take us back, right?
There are options to outsource certain inspection services.
At what cost, though? I mean, that's the thing. So even with this one person, they stay. It's 4 weeks vacation, there's sick time, those inspections still need to happen. So are those costs to get that additional help that's in here to hire a, I don't know what you call it, sanitary or on duty or whatever it is. Is that built into your estimates here?
It's not, I'm not sure how many departments, other than perhaps overtime, would build in what happens if what happens if my town administrator decides to move on someplace else and we have to outsource our town
Well,
administrator.
it's
I'm not sure
in
that
a
that's
different
built into our
department.
budget.
The department has to suck it up and the other people need to step in. There's nobody else here. Hey, we're looking for a treasurer for 8 months now. It's not happening.
Can I expand on that a little bit? Because
Anybody want to be a treasurer? Yeah.
We have someone.
can I expand on, I want to expand on that because I think the fact that it took so long to find this person means they're a unicorn. And if they do decide to leave or something happens, I'm very concerned that we're putting all of our eggs into one basket and we're going to be left high and dry, outsourcing everything at tremendous cost. So, what's the outlook for finding a replacement if this first candidate decides after a year or two to move on?
If I may, I wouldn't say we found a unicorn finally. I would say we were looking for a unicorn for a long time and then realized that if we just made it a health director, we would have many more options available to us. So that's the change that's made. This person, while tremendously qualified, is not, I would say, a unicorn out there. There are other health directors or people who would be capable of that. Obviously, if they quit, yes, we're in trouble because we wouldn't have another person. All the more reason I would like a health director hired to help manage some of this budget stuff, because you make very good points that a board of health is trying to create and present to you. So I agree. What other numbers should we put in this budget, since we're about to try to get it nailed down, to say this is our contingency to make sure we've got some coverage there? I fully support putting a number in there right now.
Is it $50,000? Show us like association, is that our contingency? Yeah. I guess it is.
Question, maybe along the same lines, but if we leave Neshoba, Steve was saying we can't go back. So can we go back to Neshoba and be part of the regional plan again? For 2 years. For 2 years. So if we go down this path and it really doesn't play out like what we were presenting, we can always make a decision to go back to Neshoba and participate in a regional program again.
And there are other regional programs, another ones that we,
And for this plan, you don't need capital, you're not building any infrastructure, you're just hiring one employee to do this work. And I think, yeah, it is a lot of work. But I think the backup, and I'm not answering for you this question, but I'm saying it the wrong way. The backup plan is we could go into another regional plan if this doesn't work out the way we're planning. Is that right? Yes, sir.
Have we talked to Neshoba and have they guaranteed that they would take us back? They would take us back.
It requires a town meeting vote to go back into the shoulder, so it expires on June 30th, so if we don't go back into the shoulder now. We'd have to go to town meeting and authorize that, and they'd want a 2-year commitment.
If I may, board, also, it's also vote of the shoulder board as well.
Right.
So there's 2 boards that have to, the town meeting going and their board vote. So real quick, can you tell me what the difference is between a health coordinator and a health director? Because if they're doing all the same stuff that Neshoba was doing, then why, what's the delta in the 2 jobs?
Where's the health coordinator?
Sure. So public health coordinator is, think the epidemiologist, the MPH. They are looking at population health from a clinical perspective. An important role. COVID is a perfect example of when you need a public health coordinator. They're looking at a population's health as a clinician would. A health director is, and I saw him walk in, we're going to pick Tom Clancy. Tom Clancy is an administrator and a leader, but at 3 a.m, he can hop in his car and turn his lights on, and he can pull hose and put on a pack and do the job. Health director really is the more administrative and day-to-day operations of a department. So in our case, looking for that unicorn, as a public health director, we had probably 15 candidates. MPHs, PhDs, incredibly talented people, but they weren't the people who were going to put on gear at 3 a.m. They weren't the folks who were going to go into Tavern on the Square and check their grease traps because it simply was not in their skill set. The health director is, in our case, luckily, usually a sanitarian or an inspector or both. They understand Title V or a Title V inspector. They, if not a working health director, which is what we're looking for at this point, they have the skill set and experience of a working field inspector. And that was moved on to that piece of, okay, what does the department look like? How am I the leader, the manager, the budget person? How do I lead a public health nurse who can do the infectious disease inspections, immunizations, that other piece of the public health department, which is up until COVID, much less seen. Blood pressure clinics and flu shots are critically important parts of the job, but that's not what most people see. They see the Title V inspections, they see their inspection reports for their restaurants. That's what most folks see. That health director has that experience. So that was really, I think, where we kind of fell into a challenge with looking for the health director. We were looking for an academic. When we needed a worker bee
Operation.
with experience, who can see that vision. I don't see us being there. I love the aspirational org chart. I don't see us there in 10 years, but having the opportunity to have a communications person. Would we lose services leaving Neshoba? No, we don't. However, from a regulatory piece, we have a difficulty getting numbers of inspections done and frequency. So as a regulatory body, we're having difficulty obtaining data from our contracted vendor who provides those regulatory services to ensure that we are meeting our regulatory responsibilities. And I think that is a big piece of what prompted this, that when we ask what should be relatively easy questions, how many inspections were done this month? And we can't consistently get responses to that. How much revenue was generated from the town of Littleton for fees last year? And we can't reliably get information from that. That as a regulatory body, that's concerning. As a clinician, my background, I go, I can't guarantee that every restaurant in town is inspected every 6 months, which is the regulatory requirement. Concerning for me. As a city board member to say, I can't say that our town is meeting the regulatory responsibility. We might be. I don't know, and I can't find that answer, which was a big piece of if we bring this in town. I would love to say, can't we just fix our regulatory oversight? And it's been going on for some time. And as talented and as wonderful and as hardworking as they are, getting that two-way communication has been a challenge, long before I joined the board.
Thank you. So it's not so much that, hey, Neshoba is this working thing and we've decided, what the heck, let's do something different.
It's deeper than that.
It's kind of broken in some important ways. What are we gonna do about it? Thank you. That's how I think about it.
Any more questions for the Board of Health? I know we're going to be talking. numbers.
Hello, this is Fred
Sure.
Faulkner. I have two questions, and on the first one, it may have been answered. I'm having a little trouble hearing the discussion. When the board came in the last time, the department budget was around 170K, and the fees were in the same range. I requested that we add fringes and OPEB to the numbers, which brought up the department budget to 200,000+. And now the excuse me, our revenues are at 240-ish thousand, if I recall the slide correctly. What changed there? And the second question is, when we looked at the paramedics presented, or the fire department presented a plan where they would be very close to being self-sustaining, only to find out as we get into billing with insurance companies and Medicare, they don't pay what we bill. So over time, we've actually had to write off some, uncollectible bills or go after elderly people on fixed income to collect. And I didn't know whether any of the kind of fees that your department would be collecting would be from this same population. And are we likely to have any collection problems from that standpoint? I'll mute again and listen to the answer. Thank you.
In response to the first question, I think the numbers changed because we did a little bit of a better job forecasting forward-looking data based on conversations had with building commission and land use department and the expectations as far as development in town. In regards to the second question, no, I don't believe those fees would be coming from the same pool of folks. A lot of it would be from development happening in town, commercial development, as well as restaurant inspections, and things of that nature.
The admin support position, how many hours is that? Or is that another half-time or? Okay.
That is a half-time. Currently, there's we allotted roughly 8 or 9 hours of admin support right now. It would be about half-time,
Okay.
and then we would look to add more this time.
Okay, but for fiscal 24, it's a non-benefit eligible position that you'd be looking at, not converting existing employee from land use or anything?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
I believe so, and then potentially adding some additional support from that department.
So how does the billing work for this? Does the health director directly to that department, or is it or the finance?
So currently the admin that works with Board of Health now utilizes a system called OpenGov.
Okay, so that would be the admin's job once they come on board. They would be more of the billing as well.
Correct, and then to work with finance, getting the paperwork up to them to make sure it all goes on the right line items in your spreadsheets.
And initially, it would be the health director doing that until we get that position filled.
And so we have a little bit of administrative support right now from land use, so there's
Right.
something there,
Okay.
not a lot of hours. The feedback we heard is that would be important to build out early.
That fee structure, since it's not really billing, it's most of the fee structure is with every application, we need to, we're not going to process your application for Title V or for your inspection. Without you having to check, if you don't pay the fee, then you don't get your inspection, you don't get your signature. So as opposed to post-operations billing such as the ambulance service, where you cross your fingers and
Right.
hope they're covered and get some funding out of it. This is all front end that it's a fee for service that is paid at the time. It's not after the fact. So that billing piece is a little bit more straightforward and there's less collections piece such as fire department has to utilize. It's you pay when you apply or you don't claim.
The other thing, I have a hard time wrapping my head around how one person can do all of that what's expected at Y24.
The food inspections and the plan inspections and the plan reviews and the depot tests. I mean, it's all about time management, blocking the calendar. You can go out and say Monday, I'm going to do these things, and Tuesday, I think it's very good, very reasonable.
If I may, from what we've gotten from Neshoba, their estimate is they usually spend about a day to a day and a half in Littleton a week. Which brings us back to agreed, there's a lot of work to be done. And if that's what you're saying, your estimate of how much time is being spent here in town. It's hard to sometimes see how those two things match. I agree, it's a lot of job, a lot of work for one person. But I'd rather get 80% of the job done than less than that, which might be where we are now. It's hard to say. So I agree, it's a big job for one person. I see down the road that, you know what, maybe we're gonna bring in, you know, it's gonna be looking at the health director and what they estimate the position and the department needs. Maybe our next move as we identify is another half-time inspector. Where's our biggest need? Is it Title V? Is it restaurants? Again, that's why we really need that expert in who can really have that vision for what's next year, what's 5 years, what's 10 years, to both meet the needs of the community now and also to be the best department and most effective public health agency we can be. And right now we're marking time.
So does this change the liability on the town? Right now, if Neshoba is supposed to be doing inspections and they don't, and something happens, or is the town liable or is Neshoba liable?
That'd be a great time. Council question.
Because we'd obviously be liable here.
I believe you both be named in a lawsuit. Exactly.
It's going to take hard to outsource regulatory responsibility. So that even if we contract them to provide a service, if they don't, I think ultimately come back to the town that you're going to be body, you're the responsible parties and you're not sure ensure that they're occurring. But again, just they want a TV.
Yeah, you're talking the advancing of someone maybe passed away from poisonous food because then they go in an audit. We didn't inspect it in the last 6 months. We get to some liability, right? That would right now, I would assume would fall on the show. But
we're responsible for regulating the show.
Yeah, so
Right.
either way, I think we're going to have a
We
piece of
pay,
that
we
pie.
pay them for the service of providing for our.
Yeah.
And
We
we just said we're not sure they're doing a great job.
Okay.
I know how that would play in part.
Any other questions for the Board of Health?
Just, so it's the opinion of the board that the residents of Littleton and anybody that is a restaurant in Littleton would be better served by making this change.
Yes.
I have one other question. What happens with food trucks that are now certified by someone like Neshoba and then they can go between communities? Now we're not part of the consortium. And what happens to a food truck? Do they all have to be recertified for Littleton then?
Let's see. It'll probably require some policy change and writing policy, right? You would imagine.
Work in process. Yeah, work in process, right?
It's already working.
Yeah. So we are kind of a border community that right now, for the way it works for Neshoba, that they will inspect it as Neshoba and basically rent a license for their entire service area. As a border community, that's great if you're here. If you go towards Westford's independent, Chelmsford's independent. So that, you know, it is kind of an awkward, if we were more central to the Neshoba group, it probably would have minimal impact on any food trucks simply because they don't travel generally very far. It could be a toss up how impactful it might be to the business side of things for those folks. But they would have to be inspected, certified to us.
See that becoming more and more of an issue with dirigible and other places like that want to even some companies have been doing more and more food trucks to reward employees and that kind of stuff. So I think certainly it sounds like it's work in progress already, so.
There have been issues already, so that's why it's work in progress.
So this is a very, I mean, you mentioned it up in when you started the presentation. This is a very short time frame. We have to make this decision, get this person on board before town meeting so we can say, yes, we're going to the show, but no, we're not going to the show, right? Basically, that's
I need to take action.
right.
Mr. Chairman, can I speak?
Is the time frame? Are we cutting this too tight? I know you guys have talked about this for a while. And I know nothing about health. I know finances. I just think that we're cutting this so close. We're gonna go into this budget season. If we approve this, we're gonna hire this one person. We're gonna find that there's just not enough there. And we're stuck with this model for another year until the next budget season rolls around. Is there a way that we re-up with the show for the next 2 years and then take a deep dive into this over that time frame and really nail down the process of what we need?
I mean, with all due respect, we've been doing this for the past 2 years. And
I know.
take action and along with it.
And you've been looking for 2 years too.
We haven't been looking for the right person. What was agreed upon in the job description that's out there right now is a public health coordinator, not a health director.
So the next person that you hire is gonna be more of that
It'll be the health
coordinator
director.
person.
No, it'll be the health director.
Now, after the health director. So the next hire you get would be
Administrative
that little
support.
worker bee
And
that
yeah,
comes in
to help make. the
is
job.
able to do the inspection thing, which is the person that should.
It will be, no, it would be administrative support. It's the next hire. Without being the health director.
I feel like that,
Outside of this model, like you have the health director and you have an admin support in here. That third
Sure,
person.
when there's 20 more restaurants over there, we'll need another.
so
Which is the person that you couldn't find.
No.
the public health coordinator
No, it's not quite.
was trying to split the middle of some, like myself, felt that a director was a good start. I felt that some wanted an inspector to be the first hire. And that created a gap. And through working together, it was okay, well, let's try to create, at least for our, day one role, a position who's got some of that and a little bit of that, and we'll create this public health coordinator role. That was always a problem because you were trying to hire somebody who was, a licensed sanitarian who could go out and get a grant from the state, and we're gonna give them $70,000 total a year in salary. That's in my opinion, where the unicorn problem came from. Because the people who were qualified enough to do that upper level stuff, because right at the gate, we were also saying they were gonna be the manager of the public health nurse. So that's a role that we're trying to hire for, and people said, I don't even want to come back for a second interview because it's what you're asking for is too much. So I think we trapped ourselves by creating a job description that had a lot of great things in it, but was too hard to hit. So now we're saying, forget that middle road, director, and then other positions can be more of just the licensed food inspector, just the sanitarian, etc. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
I think
And
the
I know
public
you
health
said this
coordinator
before,
will not be
just
filled.
thinking in now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A working director as opposed to a visionary.
Okay.
Visionary would be awesome, but it's a working director who can see the big picture and guide, but also go out and get their hands dirty and do the job until they're more or less.
Health director, why don't we meet them, okay, and the board will decide, and then we let that gentleman there and the lady know how we feel it. The question is, will he be willing to sign a contract for 1 year if we don't see that his performance proceeding to, as much you people say he's gonna be a god, something like that? Maybe he's not gonna be somebody that we be expecting to. Will he be able to sign one contract for 1 year if we don't like him? We go back to Nashoba. And besides, you people are gonna miss Nashoba. If we go away from the Nashoba, then we don't have anybody else. And this is a small town. the sewage treatment is gonna improve to a point where as many home is gonna be, you know what I mean, connected to. And then, you know what they're gonna do? They don't need no Board of Health no more. So I respect the technicality that you expressed to this crowd here. But the question is, will you say, because you're the chairman, when I was a chairman, I was very nice to everybody. You stop for me to speak. That's okay. The question is, let's meet this gentleman. Let's see how good he is.
Yeah, there'll be an interview.
And sign a contract for 1 year, not for 2 years.
There'll be an interview process. And I believe the town administrator will be responsible for reviews.
That's right, but I'm saying, I suggest, because I've been in construction and set the system, I've seen it so many that I forgot how many I did. The question is, he will say, would you sign a contract for 1 year? And if he does okay, we'll improve to another year. Because you're not gonna have anybody else like Jimmy. No one.
Mr. Griffin's fantastic.
And also, I'd like to see Jamie to be an art to the, when we meet this gentleman. And he doesn't have to say nothing, Jimmy, but we're gonna ask him a lot of questions.
Yeah, in the perfect world, we have this health director.
Because I respect you guys. Okay, but I've been in the Board of Health for many years. Probably you wouldn't know even was born. And I've been doing construction for many years. Okay, and I had 350 people under me.
Thank you.
All right?
And
So the sewage treatment is gonna improve to a point where many other people, the home house, they say, I like to get connected. I like to get connected. Right now, we only have few things connected.
Thank you, Gene.
Mr.
Thank
Insaldi
you.
wanted
Thank you
to,
for letting me
he had,
speak.
Mr. Insaldi had a few comments.
Steve, to answer your question as far as tight timeline, in my opinion, the answer would be very tight. Because we have a job description that hasn't been reviewed by any of staff yet, hasn't been reviewed by the Personnel Advisory Committee, then has to get posted, then have to do interviews. I think we've just witnessed from the assistant planner that it takes months to do that. So to think that we could do this successfully by July 1st, I just want to warn the town, I think it's highly doubtful. While I don't disagree with some of the concept that they want to do, I think it's really tight. And I'm concerned that we're not going to be able to provide a service because we're not there.
So I guess, what's our emergency fallback? That would be the question, right? Outside of contracting individually, this person to do Title V's, this person to do restaurant inspections, that's kind of we'd be a la carting it by contracting out. If this fell through, like you had mentioned, the individual leaves in 3 months, high and dry. I mean, we have two options: contract out like crazy, hopefully, or go back in the show for sounds like 2 years, and then we're back at the drawing.
We can speak to the folks that share services like Westford and Drake and do, Sudbury and Sudbury and Concord. But that would be the fallback plan, is to coordinate some shared services with surrounding communities.
Mr. Zeldin, I know you had a comment you wanted to make.
Yeah, I just, Michael Zeldin, Lawrence Street in Littleton. I'm a former member of the Board of Health and was, shall we say, part of the team that started the process of looking and seeing the urgency, and I emphasize urgency, for Littleton to have its own, frankly, health director. And the reason for this are crystal clear. First of all, with all due respect to the Neshoba Boards of Health and its director, they are now at the point where I also was the representative for the town and for the board onto the Neshoba. So I was able to see a lot of their thinking and attitude. Let's put it this way: I'll summarize it. They're ill-equipped financially, resources, and all the rest to even come close to fulfilling what they were supposed to do here. And one of the only reasons that the town was unable to monitor the situation was simply because the systems used by Neshoba are not an old-fashioned, they're purposely opaque.
because their main source of income does not come from the services you're describing. They come from nursing, because they also operate for other smaller towns that don't have our access to healthcare resources for people who cannot afford to pay for healthcare. That's not little. There is a reluctance, and I'm understating it, a resistance to increasing the budget. That is the assessment to the town in order to cover the cost of delivering what Neshoba is supposed to deliver. So anytime we ask for an increased attention to inspections, what we got was, we don't have the staff. And they're sufficiently, shall we say, in difficulty, because the only way they can staff themselves is temporarily using temporary grants given on an emergency basis by the state. In sharp contrast with a health director, I'd like to point out, in this town, whether they last for a year or two, our position with regard to the state, which hasn't been mentioned here, is very important, because the state's Board of Health and the Board of Education play a significant role in what each town does with respect to health. Our place at the table has been greatly hindered, not by the individual ability of Neshoba, but by the inability of Neshoba as an organization to come up with people who are professional enough to deal with modern healthcare. For example, I'll just leave you with this: of all the associations and towns around here, the only one that did not get to recognize within hours, I'll grant you 2 days, of what COVID really was, because health directors, real ones, and I know that the resume of the folks who call themselves health director will see this. We're the only ones, we and the Neshoba group, the only ones who did not identify that virus as being upper respiratory and infectious. Why is the town of Littleton willing to accept that level, that, shall we say, congregated level of competence, because it can't be afforded? That's a great danger to this town.
All right, thank you. It brings up, I guess, a few points. I mean, well, that was a once in a century pandemic. So I'm just going to leave it at that. So, yeah, God willing.
Wilson's lips.
It's not even
Leave that at
COVID, I'm talking about.
It's not a debate. I'm just saying that in fairness to Neshoba,
And
they'd be shut down as an organization if they weren't providing the service. I have to assume that they get audited to some level.
no.
Or
It's
then
after the fact.
how are we, what's the metrics for saying whether they're successful or not? We don't have, not one number has been presented to me, not one, and I'm not saying I'm against this at all.
Yeah.
Where's the data that shows this restaurant hasn't been inspected in 2 years?
It actually, if you.
That's the numbers that help me make a decision. I'm just saying as a board member.
The last set I saw, and I'm basically probably close to 2 years behind, something like that, but even 2 years ago, and it's probably more contemporary, I would say that more than half of the restaurants, and I'm including the Point, have not been inspected, recorded. More than half. And there are incidents that go on and they're reported and not necessarily followed up.
Okay, it's a statement. I don't see the data in front of me to make a decision. That's all. I mean, it helps me.
That's part of the problem is we can't.
And it sounds like that's a bigger problem with you, which in itself perhaps could be a reason to go internal with this. So I don't want to make it sound like it's going both ways, but.
And the other point I would make is that I think that the professional staff at Littleton is perfectly capable of turning around an appointment like this in a timely manner.
No, thank you, Mike. Let's get back to the board. Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Can I ask so you said if the director left or we had a problem, our fallback position would be talking to Westford or one of these other communities. Why isn't that our starting position? Why wouldn't we be partnering with another community at the get-go rather than trying to go off on our own?
What employee of the Littleton town will take that role on to coordinate that?
We've been doing that with we share electrical inspectors and plumbing inspectors and all these other inspectors. Why wouldn't we do something like this? Why wouldn't your board go off and talk to Westford and ask the same question rather than starting with our own department? What, I'm trying to figure out what the advantage is versus going via.
Yeah, I think that's the difference, is that those towns have a director and then employees, not just a board. And so they can work between directors to share those resources, but there's still somebody in charge of the Department of Health for each of those towns. We're right on the line. So half our neighbors are in Neshoba and the other half each have their own Department of Health with a leader employee in that position. When you have that point of contact, that conversation becomes much easier. And you can then say, okay, let's share some resources. To jump from where we are to that piecemeal concerns me greatly, because I don't know who owns it. And I would be concerned, no offense to my colleagues on the board, but I would be concerned for the town if this elected board was trying to manage that day-to-day operation of how that would function. Well, but you asked, what's plan B?
Yeah. Well, that's important.
I don't see a good plan B. It's go back to Neshoba, where we are not getting our needs met as we would like them. It would give us an opportunity if we had to go that direction. I would strongly urge that we still try to hire some of these people, not after 2 years, but in 6 months, so that we can have some overlap and try to build that department out. But the costs then go up because we're paying now 2 parties
Right.
for less service.
And Gary, I'd go to your question. Suppose I said, when was the last time every restaurant in Littleton was inspected? Which is a perfectly legitimate question for me or anybody to ask. And it sounds like we cannot answer that. And if I told any of my friends in town, they would freak, I think, appropriately. So I guess I'm saying, I didn't realize it was quite, and this is not about you guys, I didn't realize it was quite this broken.
Well, it is at the board. I mean,
What?
You're saying it, but that's directed at the board. Why, as responsible as Board of Health, why are we holding Neshoba accountable, saying, I want to see how many times you inspected? I mean, so we can't kind of have it both ways.
It's what you've tried to do.
But we,
And that's the problem.
so for shortly after I joined the board,
Right.
I actually made that simple request because I had served on a board of health in another community, which was an independent, had its own department. And that was our monthly piece. The board health director came in, here's all the inspections we did, here's all.
Yeah, that's what you'd expect.
We did 15 inspections in the last month. 14 of them were great, no issues. One of them had an issue,
Yeah.
this, and this. We followed up 2 days later, all is well. We had this many cases of this many cases of that, but there saw this many patients. And it was half a page, but here's an activity report. Here's what happened. And here's any flags going. Here's some things that weren't worthy of a phone call, but in our monthly meeting or our bi-weekly meeting, here's some updates for the board. That level of response was requested and we weren't able to be successful. As a board member, I had to go through our town clerk and file a Freedom of Information Act to get copies of the most recent inspections. I picked 25 places, including the schools, just at random. Pick the big places. Around town, I want the last inspection report to these ones plus the schools. And I was basically bounced to town clerk's office and was reminded that Freedom of Information request had to go to the town clerk as a Board of Health member to Neshoba.
Okay.
And while I don't want to give hard numbers because this was some time ago, and while back then I had my spreadsheet, I don't have it with me at the moment, there was enough that had been more than 7 or 8 months, some more than a year, that it was concerning for me.
So I have a question. So obviously we're not the first town to jump away from a Neshoba organization or any of the health organizations. You're modeling this, I guess the extended model, obviously off of other towns that work. Is there a similar model to how they broke away? I mean, lessons learned, we have any data that shows how does a town break away from this?
Yeah.
Properly.
That I have.
Do we does the town have to just swallow the big pill and throw a ton of money at it and try to hire the whole force? Or is this what you came up with? Being sensible, I guess, financially, it's sensible, but it doesn't always equate to the right way to do it. And that's what I'm trying to, there's a lot you guys are talking about, issues and problems that we're having. And that's why.
Well, I think that putting this person in place that has, 3 decades of experience. doing this sort of thing and building departments and running departments, and maybe that municipality, maybe they did break off from somewhere and
Yeah.
things are sort of all over the place, and this person comes in and steps in and makes order of it, and organizes it and makes it efficient, it runs it like it should be run.
Yeah.
That's sort of how we like to approach this, is get it all together, organize it, make it run efficiently, and do the best we can for public health and the residents.
So, just, I just don't want to leave the impression that I was busting on you. I can't. But seriously, because I mean, if you're having to do a file, I feel like you've done your due diligence. I just.
Yeah.
So.
A couple of questions. I'm sorry I'm asking so many questions. It's good. It's a big decision. First, have we been in contact with other towns that are serviced by Neshoba? See if they have the same level of service, same concerns that we do? Is there?
I'm actually gonna defer to Mr. Zeldin on this. We've actually met all the folks at the Neshoba meeting.
Just to repeat, some of my information may be a year old or so, but I don't think anything's changed. I know for a fact nothing's changed. There are two towns that come close to us in population, which is interesting, that are part of and considering leaving the Neshoba at the moment. And both of those, along with Littleton, are the only folks who pressed at their board meetings the, shall we say, the inadequacies and the shortcomings of the association. The majority of towns are very happy because of the cost to them. They're range in size from anywhere between 2,500 to 8,000 is the max. I think I've seen for towns that are smaller up that way than Littleton. Their budgets don't look like our budgets. All the towns are of a different character than Littleton. We are far more like, let's put it this way, we're closer to Acton and Westford in character, scaled up income, all the rest. And they're suffering, or they're having difficulty getting their services from those size towns in the association. To this date are having trouble getting their work done because the other towns that make up the majority of the associations refuse to further fund the association. So the answer to your question is that people are satisfied with the individual director that they have that services their town. He's fine, except he can't do the work because it's too much given all his other responsibilities to the other town, which is far greater than Littleton by itself.
Yeah, if we get 8 hours a week out of
Yeah.
someone that requires full-time, there's no way they can service.
Yeah, in fact, and I'll go back to Mr. DeCoste, he mentioned that it's our Board of Health has determined that separating ourselves from Neshoba is in the best interest of those residents. I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Yeah.
With that agreement. That's why.
And I certainly don't disagree with you guys, but trying to do what you're doing. Have we been, so those other two towns that Mike was talking about that want to get out? Have we been in contact with them? Maybe we can collaborate with them to set up a regional, our own little mini Neshoba that we can.
Our priorities.
Gear up.
Priorities, Littleton. Focused on finding the right person to run.
I almost think that if you build it, they will come almost, we had the Littleton Electric, we had Littleton Water, then we could share it once we got to establish, so to speak. I think this potentially could be that same model. I know that's a leap, but where you're sitting here, you've got an established department where now you could say, reach out to another town and say, hey, would you like to split the resource we have?
But they also started by saying that there's grants for regionalization, and we're not
Yeah.
looking at regionalization for the other communities.
Right, so when the
Doing the same
director's
thing.
in place, they can reach out for a grant to hire, say, a sanitarian that's shared with Westford, or a food inspector that's shared with Acton.
Okay. Kind of like Mr. Mullen does with electric and water
Correct.
inspectors and things.
The prospect of trying to go to two neighboring towns at a point like this to say, hey, let's build one together, all three of us. I can't fathom what the timeline would be.
Well, that's
for
what I
that
said, is
cooperation.
the best approach. Re-upping with Neshoba, taking the time over the next couple of years to put that program in place.
What I would say is when I joined the board in December 21, I had some of these initial concerns and saying, well, why can't we just work with Neshoba to improve the level of service? Why can't we pay them more money to get an improved level of service? Those did not appear to be options. There was not interest in doing that from their end. And I was told the vote was made. We are leaving Neshoba, period. So I've never really looked at it now to say, well, maybe we can stick around. No, the vote was made. We are leaving Neshoba, period. So I didn't see it as much of an option to say, well, let's just stretch it out with them longer, because the message was heard.
Right, so if I may, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, Steve.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we stretch it out and stay with Neshoba, we're not gonna get any more information from them. It's not like they're gonna wake up tomorrow, decide to be transparent with us.
I'm not saying the information, I'm saying the planning.
Right, but I think it's
It's
hard to plan with the lack of transparency that's occurring right now with Neshoba. We don't have those hard numbers. So how can we even build on something when we don't know what numbers we're looking at? Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, until we get, our own person in here, our health director, to build this department, see what is actually coming in, see what the level of services that are actually required, the number of inspections and things like that, permitting. To me right now, it's a mystery in some respects. We just don't have enough of that information, I think, to even move forward. If we wait 2 more years to build something, I don't think we're going to be in a better position 2 years from now than we are right now.
I think this is more of a discussion we had with
I don't think.
finance
Yeah.
committee and
No, but I know and that's fine. But I just, as far as, all you've done your diligence, you've done FOIA requests, you've met with other towns, and, to bring this before us for our consideration, I think you've done your homework. I just personally just don't see it. And correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you feel that, yeah, maybe we can hold off a couple more years, but I don't get that sense from you.
I don't think there's any better time than right now.
Okay, thank you.
I'll say I don't want to go another 2 years without going into restaurants I'm eating at. I've been infected.
Just based on your timeline, am I to understand correctly that if we don't get the job description and the grading and the position and the interview, your intention is to, at town meeting, request that we extend or redo our contract? Is that?
Our intention is to get the job description
Right, but
approved
if you don't fill all
and-
these things, then that's, you're trying to do it by that deadline so that you can.
that would be the fallback plan. I mean, I see no reason in the world why we can't get this job description approved and put before the personnel advisory committee in the next, few days and get it graded and move forward.
And we can make that a priority from our side, we can make it a priority, that's the pleasure. We can make it something that we want to execute.
it's presented. So any other questions of the board?
So if we commit to Neshoba, what we're actually committing to is paying them X amount of money for the next 2 years, right?
Whatever they assess us at.
Whatever they assess us at, but we don't actually have to use, we could also still hire someone and doing double. Basically doing our own services, paying Neshoba whatever they want, but we could still bring this in-house as we build out the department. versus
You
what
still
the
get
show-
rid of inspections they've done.
What?
Using the show as that backup.
Yeah, use Neshoba as a backup, not rush to get this in place. We could pay Neshoba and bring this in.
What's it costing us a year?
49,
50,
50. Yeah, it's gone up double in the last 5 years. Right.
But
I think we would have to look at the contract though to also see, is it possible?
Can we do that?
The contract, can we
I'll
take some
understand
fees
now.
for the inspections we're doing and let them get the fees for the inspection?
Right.
That, I'm not sure how the contract would look, but that
Yeah.
could potentially be, since
I can't imagine.
we're paying 50 as a town, but they're taking in, again, our estimate is anywhere between $150,000 and $300,000 a year in fees.
So they're not gonna stand down.
They're doing the telephone thing. They're not making money on the handset, they're making money on the monthly services. It's the fees and fees, and I'm not sure how the contract would.
I like the idea of an overlay.
Yeah, there's.
Right. But yeah,
Yeah,
if the contract would allow us to, to do stuff in-house and have, when we have more things than we can do. And, okay, we're gonna send the next 5 Title V surveys to you, and you can take the fees for those. I simply don't know if that would be something that their board would be
in favor of, but it's certainly something that we could.
Thank you.
Based on
we
the
can
fact, based on the fact they wouldn't allow us to pay more
A
money
la
for more
carte.
services.
Yes, a la
I think they're willing to play ball.
They're not willing to take less money and give us less service.
Yes. So last question, and this is more of a memory problem that I have. At town meeting, what did the voters actually vote for? We voted to establish,
Voted to
I want to make sure that we're,
withdraw from the Neshoba Associated Boards of Health.
I believe that was, okay.
And
Established.
take what action is required, necessary action. Yeah.
Want to make sure that we're not just sitting here for the public that's viewing.
No, that's actually a good one, yeah.
Saying, hey, let's just break away. This has already been voted on by the town. Just now we're talking about the mechanism and when to do it.
Article 35, authorizing the withdrawal from the Neshoba Associated Boards of Health, and take any other action in relation to.
Which is building a department or join another consortium. Yeah. Okay. All right, thank you. I think we've got enough fun from you guys for sure. Appreciate it. Well, we're gonna be discussing our whole budget and this will be part of it as we run through this.
Thank you guys for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So if you have any other questions,
Thank you.
I will take a motion to adjourn the Board of Health meeting.
Second.
I'll make a motion.
So moved.
Roll call vote, Matt Wason,
Always, yes.
Gino Faralloni,
Yes.
Dan Kane. Dan Kane, yes. Kevin Davis,
Kevin Davis, yes.
and Kevin Baker votes yes.
Thank you guys.
Thank you all.
Appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, you know, I think
All right. Let's, our next agenda item is A, discuss and finalize the FY 24 capital budget. And B, discuss and finalize the FY 24 operating budget. This will be between the finance committee and the select board. Down to the numbers. Mr. Insaldi, are you taking the reins or is Brian?
Yeah, I can start.
Thank you.
He's passing it on. So the, is that right? Yeah. So the first sheet we've seen the blue to the green is the capital, the proposed capital for FY 24. On the second sheet is.
Excuse me, this is Fred. Excuse me, Tyler, do you have a quorum on in the room?
I do, Fred, yes.
Okay, look, I'm sorry, I'm fading fast. I'm gonna bail on you.
All right, feel better, Fred, thank you.
Thank you, Fred.
Yeah, feel better, man.
Right, so that second sheet is adjustments that has happened, so I can go through those. So for example.
Yeah, you're referring to sheets 1 and 2. I don't know which.
Sheets page, yeah, that would be this sheet right here.
What's your page number?
Page 3.
Page 2, yeah, it'd be page 3, yes.
Thank you.
So the Neshoba Valley Technical High School actual assessment, it was 784. 747 was updated to 781 592. So that was a variance of $3,155 on picked up. But since as we get information all the time, we just got an email from Dr. Pigeon at Neshoba this afternoon, and our assessment went back up to 783,036. So that'll get added to the bottom of the line just so you can keep a running total. So, you know, I can continue to read the whole thing. Or bottom line is that we have left to the positive 14,191 less the 3,000 that we just realized that we have to pay more to Neshoba Valley Tech. It's less.
So we have 11,000 in the black.
So 11,000 right now in the black, and then on the back of that sheet that you're looking at is the $370,000 worth of requests that weren't funded. The requests that were made from the department heads. We can go through this list if you want. Do you want us to read through this list and explain that?
Of the unfunded?
No, on all the adjustments that were made.
Well, these are necessary adjustments that had to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so.
Exactly.
I'd like this question.
Page 3 is that.
Just real quick,
Yeah.
it's like, a dozen of them say budgeting error, I'm just trying,
Yeah, no, good.
what does that mean?
Oh,
That means when the departments did their budgets, they entered them incorrectly into this.
Thank you, okay. Okay.
no, that's a good question. Any other questions on the budget changes that came in over the last, I'm assuming, month or so, right? It's a month.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Wait, I don't think I'm reading it. What's the total of the budget surplus deficit? What's the total of that column?
To the right, it's a running total, so the 14,191, the bottom,
Oh, I get it. So it's running, perfect, got it. So that bottom number should.
less,
Got it.
less this additional 3,000 that we have to
That
put
makes
back
sense.
into the show attack. So it's probably somewhere in the vicinity of 191.
So we've got 14,000 and we've got outstanding requests of 370, 745?
Correct.
Well, cool. We covered nothing.
Is there anything staggering that sticks out as far as shortfalls that we didn't expect? I mean, some of these,
As far as the budget changes or the.
yeah, I mean, a lot of these are, looks like people went over budget, right?
Why don't we go through it? I'll go through it.
All right, thank you.
All right, so like I mentioned, the show tech, we budgeted 784 and it was updated to 781 and change. So we picked up 3155. The what's called the
Out of district.
out of district, okay, thank you. The out of district technical schools was 28,500. We realized that we did not need that, so we picked up 28,500. So that brought it to 31,655. Parks and Rec is one of those assistant director salary increase in the grade that was done, so that we originally asked for 79,994. It now was 81,474. So that was a minus 1480. So that running total is now at 3175. Shade Tree Committee, we had level fund budget at 3,500, was updated to $5,000. That's
Cindy had a chance.
Right.
To speak with you on that.
Right.
Spoke to the committee.
The original budget was 5,000, it was cut to 35.
Right.
and we
We
put
decided
that
to
to
lower
$5,000. Right. So that's $1,500 that we lost. So that number got down to 28,675. Land use, the office assistant salary budgeting error, it was 23,328 that we had. It was actually 25,057. So again, we lost 1729. So that number was now at 26,946. That running total to the positive at this point. The next line, the town clerk, we decreased the postage budget $4,000 to $32.50, picked up $750, increasing that surplus to $27,696. Elections, we increased the postage expense from $4,000 to $47.50, so that took out that $750 and brought that number back to $26,996. The police department, we had a number of personnel budgeting corrections that we needed to make, starting with the executive assistant salary. We had at 64,916, we increased that to 65,229. That was a loss of $313, bringing our running total to the positive of 26,633. Police chief budget, police chief salary at 156 was actually 160, 463. So we lost 3925. So that decreased our running surplus to 22,708. The deputy chief was 116, 221. It was actually 117, 366. We lost 1145, bringing that surplus down to 21,563. Officer wages, I'm sorry, 1.4 million, 1.456736. It was actually 459,325. That was another decrease of 2589, bringing our running total down to 18,974. Quinn bill increased due to the salary changes. So we had 41,279. That means changed to 42,827, losing 1548, bringing our surplus down to 17,426. Uniform expense, another budgeting error, $40,000. It's actually 42,800, losing another $2,800, bringing that budget surplus down to 14,626. Dispatch wages, the correction, we had 477,444. We needed to increase that to 479,278, decreasing 1834, bringing our surplus down to 12,792. Sewer, wastewater, stormwater, that increased number from that we got from water department. We had 480,000. We need 507,901, bringing in a decrease of 27,901, which our surplus now became a deficit of 15,109.
Just to jump on that one, I mean, that's a big one.
Yeah.
How did they give us, how was the number wrong by almost 28K?
Well, it was budgeted based on the number that Alicia got from the water department initially, but when they looked and refined their numbers, they realized that it was wrong.
So I thought Alicia initially allocated high, so it went even higher. Am I missing something?
That's not just summer, that's sewer, wastewater, and stormwater, so it's everything having to do with the testing, all stormwater and wastewater.
So it's an estimate that we get at the beginning of the year. That's what I'm trying to figure out. This is an estimate. And then it came in over. Yes, it's not.
Alicia was a budget estimate that she got, and then the more refined number came in,
Which we thought was conservative, but.
which we thought was conservative, but apparently not.
Right, now, Can we just go back to all these budgeting areas? I look at several of the departments have these.
Mhm.
Is this something that we don't typically see?
If I could speak to that,
Yeah.
so one of the things we realized when we put the budget together this year is we counted on each department to calculate what the increases were.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I was talking with our new finance director is next year that's something we're going to change because it's really formulaic, and if we do that for all departments moving forward, we won't have this issue.
Okay.
So really what you're seeing is a demonstration of why we need to change that practice to
Okay.
basically make the calculation.
Okay.
Yeah, in the budget book, and we were going through, and Mark and Al had these comments. The bottom detail of the employees doesn't match the budget at the top. The bottoms came right from a computer system. The top was the department's trying to budget off of information that it really didn't know very well. We put those things back into sync. That's why all these budgeting errors.
Okay, thank you. 'Cause that explains, I haven't seen it.
And they're all basically the same reason. That they're now in sync.
I mean, I don't want you to have to go through the rest of the list.
Yeah.
That's what it is. The only thing outside of these budgeting errors, Anthony, if I may, since I'm the one who did the list here. The health insurance, we got the actual increase, we had budgeted. Was it 9% was the original estimate we got.
And that's every year this happens. We never know.
And the actual is 6.2.
Okay.
What I found when I looked at how the estimate was arrived at in the initial budget. Basically, we took last year's budgeted number and added 9% to it. What that missed out was the activity that happened during the year. And when I looked at the detail, there was 26 additional plans that happened from January to January. So that was kind of lost. So all the cushion that we initially thought was in there, it's gone. So instead of realizing, I think it was realizing the difference between the 9 and the 6.2.
Yeah.
The 6.2 is really 7 something is an increase. So there's additional plans that aided. Plus we had to allocate some additional plans for this year because same kind of turnover happens every single year. So
We still.
That's why we're not seeing a huge number down there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Still,
we'll take 86, but it could.
still on the right side of the line.
Yeah,
Correct.
I have a question.
Sure. Go ahead.
So Ryan, the new process that you're talking about, looking at the water department's delta, it's percentage wise maybe the biggest one up there. So I'm wondering if that process is going to, be in place, because I know that their budget process is probably different from the rest of the departments to some extent because they are much more of an independent entity.
We just get a bottom line number from them, Matthew, so that new process that Ryan was talking about for personnel, that wouldn't be impacted on the water.
Okay.
department.
Okay, thanks.
And just the last thing that we did do, if I could, Steve, just follow up on that, we did add some money in for Indian Hill because at the time we put the budget together, we didn't know that we would be purchasing Indian Hill. So about $40,000 in there for utilities and other miscellaneous costs, which again leaves us in the end the positive of about $14,191. Then carries forward to the fourth page in your hand.
So realistically, there's about 2 items on here that we could actually spend it on. If we so desired, or 3, or we don't.
Right, and then anything else we'd have to come up with offsetting cost savings in
Yeah.
the budget as is, right?
I think if I could advocate for one of these items,
Munis training.
it would be the munis training, since we're going through a conversion
Yeah.
this year. And also do chart of accounts.
makes sense.
I think the only thing I'm not seeing on this list, unless I'm missing it, is the sustainability's committee's $2,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, take one. There you go. Thank you. All right. Yep. Okay.
So that's already, that's counted.
Yep.
So the 8 and the 2, there's 10,000 plus the other 2,000 roughly we talked about with the school. So it's been a great night, everybody. So thanks. We're at that number right now. I'm kidding, but that's
Oh, you're not kidding.
If we approved every one of these, where would the money come from?
You'd have to take from someplace else.
Right.
Yeah. I guess I want to just make one comment about the Board of Health budget proposal. I think it would be foolish of us to assume that it's going to be cost neutral or a profit center in the long term even. I don't think that the initiatives that we've sort of have been sold that way have ever worked out. I think the ambulance is a great example, but I don't think that's a reason not to do it. The ambulances, we're providing a much better service to the town. And I do think from what I heard tonight, it sounds like we are going to be not only doing a better service, we're going to be doing actually the service that we are supposed to be doing. So even if we approach this with the idea that it becomes, a modest cost center, say equivalent to what we're paying right now to Neshoba, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because it does feel to me like we're going to be getting more stuff for the town and doing a better job. That's all.
So let's speak to the 204. So that number, that is the director and then the part-time positions beneath it, all baked into this budget. Is that correct? The two.
They didn't sit down. I don't have an answer to that.
I
The only thing I want to.
It was on the presentation. Yeah.
Steve, I want to mention too, is that the number that they're budgeting for the director is based on that specific person or what it would take for him to come here. So that hasn't been graded. So if it grades out as a regular department head position, which I have no idea because I haven't seen it. That means you'd be hiring somebody at like step 7 or 8, that particular person. That's if the job gets graded out at that point.
Okay, correct. And then adding benefits on top of that to get to the. Yes.
The 70,000 that they mentioned that they normally would pay to the show fund. Is that in the budget? That is in the budget. So this is really, that would go away and then this is that increase then of about 135.
I think it's $50,000.
It's 50.
They said 50 plus 20 in admin fees and things like that. They said it was that.
Yeah, I know it.
So the bottom line is, if we were to, I'm sorry, were you?
No, I don't think anybody answered. Right? If we have 70 in the budget, then this would be like 135.
In other words, it's in the budget right now for 70.
I don't.
It's in the budget for 50. I don't know.
What 70 is. Yeah, 50. I don't think it was 70.
Okay, because they mentioned a few times 20 in additional fees. Because when I said 70,000 going out now, they all agreed, yes, 70,000 plus 50 plus 20. They said that a couple times.
Right, so on that side, what they're looking at is they bring in the admin, the Board of Health, and then take away the work that the office coordinator for the land use department wouldn't have to pick up that work anyway, that's investment. So it's a net gain of 50, not 70, because that person's still gonna receive their salary for working in the land use department. So there'll be another individual doing the admin work for Board of Health, so it's a net of 50.
Okay, so it wasn't admin fees going to the show, it was just internal admin labor that they were using from another department. Okay, got it. So 50,000, so then the net would be 155.
So if we were going to, and we're gonna obviously discuss it, but if we decided, yes, we want to approve their proposal, we need to cut 150 from someplace. To be balanced, right?
That's it.
Cut, so, yeah, so,
Yes, significant dollars.
so as the budget's built now, we have $35,000 for show the show associated and then $15,000 for nursing services. I'm assuming that that's where we're kind of put the 50, those two buckets.
I mean, the other thing is those aren't huge numbers. The public health nurse was 20,000 initially. Administrative support 24,269. What's to stop us from pushing that part of it to special in November when other money becomes available? But
And what do you do between July and?
you're not going to hire those two right out of the gate, though. You're waiting. You're waiting to hire a director, which is going to happen.
Right.
So
what do we
it's
do
gonna
to
be-
meet that? That's the thing about this time crunch that we're in.
Well, I'm saying you're going to have a director on board if this plan goes through, like by July 1st. We'll have a director on board
Okay.
doing the services.
But we lose in nursing services.
But it was discussed that we're not hiring all these at the same time. Throughout that fiscal year, we're going to be hiring, right? Those other positions
But the only
But one
other
other
position, yeah, the one,
A nurse.
the nurse, yeah.
in administrative support.
They haven't sports gonna
That's-
come in.
No, it's another position.
It's a new.
It is. He's taking that back. And this one is, that's why I'm looking at the budget. So we would be hiring the health director right out of the gate. And then administrative support and public health nurse. That's the effect of it.
I still don't understand how one person can do all that's being expected of them in this year.
You see, we're getting into those details of,
And expect.
we don't know, as a finance team and a board of select board, I don't have those answers. I mean, I think the Board of Health answered those questions the best they could, so I don't. As an elected board, they've told you that that's the plan and that can be done, so I don't want to question that I don't know, I mean, I guess we can question it,
It
but
doesn't sound like we get that.
Yeah.
We got one person giving us 8 hours a week. We got one association giving us 8 hours a week right now, and we're being underserved with those 8 hours.
I
We
don't
get
think,
40 hours from one person who seems to be a talented individual, and maybe that's not the person we end up hiring, but that's why I think both of us asked that question of it. Is this, in your opinion, better serving our community? And it was a unanimous yes.
And we don't have a choice. I mean, I'm sorry, we have to do what town meeting told us to do, right?
right, there's no timeline on it though. this is being identified as the time, now is the best time.
Well, yeah.
They put, this was all put together, it's
Yeah.
being presented to us now, so that's why we're here, right?
Yeah, I mean, as I look at the way, the budget's built now, right, I don't think we can say, hey, we're just gonna fill the public health director and not the nurse position, right? Because if the $50,000 bucket is $35,000 initial, Board of Health and $15,000 for the nursing services. So if we don't fill that nurse position, I'm assuming we have a gap in service level for that, right? Even though it's only 2 hours a week, that's gonna have to come from.
Yeah, I didn't even ask that. What is currently, what services do we use right now with public health? Or is it more of a position than when something happens?
Yes.
Excuse me, if I'm left the chair, let's ask.
It's currently just a monthly blood pressure clinic
The clinic.
that EHS utilizes to show this nurse.
Okay.
So we can potentially shop that out and then outsource that to
I think you're looking
CVS
at,
or.
I think you're looking at $35 an hour, however many hours we're gonna actually need to utilize that person.
Yeah.
That's gonna be the cost.
That could potentially be something that we could leverage a relationship with Workers Credit Union or with these
Student nurses or.
So this is where I'm trying to.
That might be something that they might want to subsidize because they do a great job of supporting our seniors and our human service department. So it might be an opportunity for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, my initial, when I looked at this, the health director, the more important piece would be to me, the administrative support. The fee collection and that part, I mean, you don't want the director being bogged down in that, right? You want someone to be doing that type of work.
Yeah, a lot of the job, like saw in their fee schedules and numbers associated with them.
Yeah.
Are things that an admin person would do, the regular billing for this license and this permit,
Yeah.
those types of things. And whether a 19.5 hour person is gonna really cut it.
But we can do that, we won't know that. This whole thing's.
I
new.
know,
So-
and that's the thing, and I know they've been working on this for a long time. It just seems like we're gonna make a decision. And we're gonna be under the gun to make sure that it works and that we're not delaying any services for the community. And I'm not getting the warm and fuzzies that we can pull this off in 2 months. I just don't get it.
Can I just ask a question of Ed? There's gonna be a transition. We decide that we're gonna do this, there's gonna be a transition in the admin service that is being provided to the Board of Health now would
Continue.
yeah, it wouldn't
Yeah,
go in overnight.
continue. So what I would like to say to that is that the software that we use in the land use department, the open gov software, can automatically bill. It can also automatically collect before any inspection is done. So there's a lot of
So
automation
correct us in the
that's
system.
occurred. One, it was alluded to earlier that our office coordinator currently, does 8 or 9 hours in Board of Health. I'd say she does the majority of her time for the board right now, just because there's so many things that they're working on, the truck regulations, the hauler regulations, in this endeavor. So her time has been specifically dedicated to the board for a few months and a few weeks in. So she does a great job trying to balance things, but other things do get pushed to the side. And I would say that in that she's able to continue to provide the admin service if there was a director hired and assist until
Bridge the gap.
until you find the path forward.
More fuzzy yet, Steve?
Well, we're sitting with the delta in front of us, and that's
To be honest with you, Chuck, is I wish they had given us the data here without the revenue side. Because to me, I don't care about the revenue side. It's a service that the community needs. And I'll bring it back, and no offense, Tom, I'll bring it back to the ambulance. Is when it was presented that our revenue stream was going to pay for this service. In my mind, when that was done, that was irrelevant. We had a service that we had to provide. And no matter the cost, we had to provide that service. We weren't getting it from that other ambulance company that was helping us. This was a better alternative. With this, I just see so many gaps. I mean, we had the plan in place there. We had the paramedics. Hired them. They were readily available. We've basically been almost full staffed all the time with the paramedics?
Like every other.
3 out of 4?
Yeah, having trouble, yeah.
Hourly
This,
or daily?
this one is, this person goes, we're stuck.
Yeah, and I guess, when we talked about where we go, what's that fall?
But that's not built into these numbers here.
Well, the salary's built in though, so
The
there's,
salary, okay, so the salaries, that the person is on staff. Accidents happen, right?
yeah,
Person breaks their leg, they're out, they can't do inspections. We have to go hire somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
That's a cost, that's not here.
We've had to absorb that any other number of roles that we've, where people have left or we've had to terminate or. I mean, that's the
Let
nature
me
of the
example of
whether it's. Yes, yes, you are.
But there was a budget in place to handle
yeah.
it. There's not a budget, you'd have,
No, it's this salary.
you'd have to go back to
The
town.
budget was this salary.
No, that's, no.
No.
Yeah.
That in his scenario, but the other scenario, this is not that, because you're still paying the individual that gets hurt or whatever.
They get vacation time.
Or whatever.
Vacation.
But
So this first example, the person leaves.
But-
I mean,
But Steve, how would that be any different? I mean, I understand that we tend to be conservative. We don't like to jump into things. So suppose we waited 2 years and now it's 20.
You're still facing the same problem.
Yes, that's where it's going. We're still initially hiring one person and an admin and a nurse. And what happens if they leave? Even if we took another 2 years to think about it, how would it be any different than now?
See, I mean,
And you're able to have those conversations with other communities and maybe collaborate with them, set up some type of.
But what they keep saying is, until there's a director, there's no one here to have the conversation on our side.
Steve, I mean,
We have a town administrator. We have a select board, we have a board of health. There's people to do that.
it's
Not what I heard from.
We negotiate using, I mean, there's a lot of these agreements, right? There's all of the inspections, there's the annual inspectors and everything. We have these agreements with these other communities for all these other jobs. We don't have it for this one. So to Steve's point, if something happens, we're stuck. And then we're scrambling to negotiate one of those agreements or find something at the later point. It would be better to start with the plan, so we knew, if something went south, how we could react to it. Or to figure out what all the other communities were doing that aren't being served and figure out, can we share services? We've talked about sharing services with, for other positions as well, so.
I mean, I think, to your point, Steve, I mean, I think for the way we're looking at this now for the fiscal 24 budget cycle, right, we can't count on the revenue stream.
right,
Not
absolutely.
for this, right? So we're purely looking at, we have $150,000 or
It's an expense.
Yeah, as an expense. We need to find a spot for it. And if the projections are right, then in fiscal 25, we have a revenue source that the potential revenue source that could subsidize some of this.
That's
So-
exactly the way we need to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I guess, I won't get into the MOA discussion with another community, but that would be something. I think cemeteries did that for a while, where Acton Cemetery director would go on vacation, and
That can bring, yeah.
I think,
So it's kind of like a mutual aid.
yeah, so, and then they would fill in during that period of time, the other time. And that's the type of agreements that would probably have to take place when you're talking about a one-person shop.
But then the person who's on vacation or whatever still has the oversight. If you just sub it out to somebody like Mark's talking about, then you don't have anybody employed in the town who's overseeing it to make sure everything gets done. I mean, it would fall on a voluntary board, which
Not good.
seems a lot going.
And Barry, I'll just say the humor of your example that if health doesn't cut it, cemetery picks up the slack. I'm not sure that's the best.
Probably not.
Yeah.
So, no,
Sorry, no.
I was just gonna say, the thing that bothers me the most is with Neshoba right now. The work that needs to be done to make sure all these inspections are done and the town is safe is not happening. Right?
So the bottom line.
Yeah, so we have something else that's not in the financials is the financial risk of something happening, right? And I think that's a problem in itself, right? And we're looking to fix that problem is we have somebody who's providing a service and we can't tell if every restaurant in this town has been inspected, for example. I think that's the issue why we're going down this path. I think, I mean, it's a big chunk of change, but There might be a big chunk of change in, like the scenario we joked about it, if somebody's at Tavern in the Square and they get sick and then they sue the town, right? What's the risk there?
So I guess going back to, the entirety of the list, right? I mean, we obviously have a lot of things that, I mean, it's great to say we have $11,000 that we get fit in 3 items, right? But I mean, that's easy, right? But I think, going back to the entirety of the list, I mean, I don't know, and it's probably good for us to hear as a board, like, I don't know how many of these asks align with some of the priorities of the select board and things like that. Because obviously, I mean, anything we add, we have to subtract, but I don't know what.
I'll tell you how
with your
to that,
right?
before Steve said you can really use the administrative because they're going through the upgrade, before he said that, I was of the opinion, okay, we have 14,191, leave it. Don't touch it. We don't have to spend it. So don't spend it. But if I mean, I think that is a priority, and I think Patty can speak to that as well because she's been through a munis upgrade. But if I think that would be a good use of it if we have it. But otherwise, I would say these things can be pushed out to 25.
But we're still stuck looking at this 200.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we entered this conversation saying, hey, where can we spend this 140?
Yeah, that's true. No, I would.
Ryan said, okay, thanks, folks. That's all.
Well,
folks.
now it gets to a conversation of, where do you cut? $200,000 out of this budget.
Or where do you find
Where do
it?
you cut?
That's, yeah, I don't, I mean, decisions have been made. Obviously prioritizations and everything has already been determined. We didn't have this in front of us. So outside of cutting something, where do we go?
Well,
Where
other
do we
than
look
cutting
for
it, I can tell you, sorry, the only thing that's still hanging out there is the cherry sheet.
Which
And,
could, it could theoretically cover it.
the governor's cherry budget estimate came out, and yes, it was plus to the town, but
Wasn't big.
that's the first step.
Yeah.
There's 4 more iterations that the budget has to go through to get to us.
What was it?
And it may not even be out there by May. That's the problem.
Well, yeah.
And I'm just gonna say, rather than cutting your department, I'm just tossing this out there. There's also, we do have an item to move some dollars to the cap stabilization fund. Nothing says we don't.
That's free cash. Free cash doesn't go into the operation.
Operation.
I stand corrected.
Hands are tied on that.
So just to pick on this a little bit more, if we're saying we don't care about, if we go with Steve's argument that we don't care about the revenue coming in, then we shouldn't care about the expense of paying Neshoba for a couple of years if we're not using them either, right? And they're taking the revenue, right? It would be effectively where we could sign up for Neshoba for 2 years, decide somewhere in the middle, we're gonna start hiring our own guy and do it, and not care that we're not getting the revenue coming in because
We're not getting served.
no, I'm saying we can hire someone to do the service and still allow Neshoba to collect the revenue if that's what it takes, because we're not caring about the revenue.
But if they collect the revenue, how do we know the services get done?
Because we're providing the services.
You're still allowing them to.
There has to be something in the contract.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we gotta look at the contract. I
Yeah,
don't know.
it's gotta be a contract. If we do it, we should be getting it.
Sure, you could certainly say, we're extending it for 2 years while we go through this adjustment phase. You're not doing anything in our town until we say we have to turn it on. As if something happened to this position, didn't happen or whatever, and then we say, okay, we're turning.
We want to use you
them as our insurance policy.
We're paying you 50,000 a year to do it. But the thing is, we're cutting into their profits. If we ever get in a scenario, because they're making the money off the fees, not off the 50,000 we get.
And their board would have to.
Right, our contract with them may not allow this.
That's a lot of.
I think logistically, that'd be. really-
I'm just trying to say, where do we get this money?
Right, well,
Or some form of it, whether health director, if that's obviously the priority in this grouping. And then sounds like administrative support, we could probably get creative with a nurse for over the next year. So we saw if we could show.
So Gary, do you think it's where, I mean, we keep kind of circling back to the health director. I mean, should we step through the list of asks and just see if there's anything else anyone wants to advocate for, or, I'm just trying to figure out how we how we narrow down or figure out what's still on the list to talk. Yeah.
I would like cards. Munis is the only thing, if Steve advocates for that, and because we're going through that training, I think it's in June or July for the transition, right?
That's 8,000.
Maybe to get that.
We're going to the new software version, I believe, in August. That's
Yeah, so the transition starts probably in June. They have both systems going at the same time, Patty.
Nope, basically,
Switch.
you switch, so you start one day, you go through, you run your reports, you see what's there, and then it takes like a couple of days for them to do it. And then you wake up and you pitch a new system.
It's available in a training environment right now.
Yes.
You can go in and look at it, get familiar
What's
with it,
different.
see what's different about it.
But you're right, I mean, the chart of accounts is another one, we're kind of doing a two-step process here.
Yeah, these are on there for a reason, because somebody advocated for them. So.
Well, the department advocated for them, right? And these are, yeah, I mean, department class, I'm just kind of.
Department or committee, then. I sit tight with that 14,190.
No, I mean, we have $14,000 to spend and we have $371,000 in balance.
Yeah, we have about 13, but right, once we account for that.
So
Yeah, it's less than
6,000
yeah.
the 6,000 away, and
wouldn't you love this number?
well, yeah, we have to figure that out.
Well, that's
a bigger solve.
right. The 8,000, everyone probably would be willing to. It's just throw it onto this. But I'm just trying to figure out where we
solve correct.
I need that answer. I know it's not an easy one to ask you two in general.
It's not up to us, it's up to.
It, well, but
What are our
Having gone through the budget process
right.
intimately, is there any low-lying fruit that either of you could identify that would help us to get to the $205,000 or $155,000?
Give us something to debate on. Right now, we can't just, we don't have the money, period. Okay, we're done. We need something to be able to, if
On the operations side.
if the two boards decide, vote that they want to do this, then we need to find out what.
So we had we started the budget process with a $1.7 million deficit, right?
You trimmed it down.
We trimmed it down, but keep in mind, we trimmed it down 300,000 for the schools, 1.4 for the town. So if you want to look for the money, that would be my answer.
Well, maybe you know more about this, but understanding that the contract renewal for the new buses came in a lot greater than their estimates. So is that something that they may not even be doing
That's
now, or?
Yeah, that's up to,
Yeah.
that's a school committee.
Yeah.
And I think.
But is that going to affect the budget?
They
That
have,
was a big item.
yeah, so they're trying to grapple through the process of how they're gonna pay for that increase that you mentioned, Jerry, and they're talking about using their circuit breaker, and it's like anything else, it's like LCTV, right? They talked about their fund, and if you tap into that, need to tap into it every year, it's not really sustainable. So that's what the schools is kind of looking at right now, because in order to maintain the level of school choice that we get annually, I believe that they have to accept 11 additional for next year. So that's an issue. So they can't expect to receive the same revenue every year with the school choice. And it depends on, can we accept school choice? Obviously,
Beyond the 80 or whatever they can.
Yeah.
They need 6 next year and then.
So that's not enough we can go after.
10 additional every year.
10, right?
And new.
10 new to school choice every year. Or to replace those that are graduating.
So attrition happens.
Okay.
It's not
Okay.
compounded.
It's not good.
I guess we have to get to a point
Yeah.
that the two boards, have to get to a point of, obviously, we don't want to go to town with two separate budgets. We know that nightmare scenario. So I think our two boards should get together right now and decide, do we want to support this? The other, we can say the 8,000, we can talk about that. This one is the big one in front of us. It was the one that was presented. Because if we don't have support for it, we just answered our own question. if we have support for it, then we've got to find a way to pay for it.
Right, and it sounds like the schools are already absorbing a somewhat unexpected increase, so it's, given that they're already absorbing that, it's a little tougher to ask them to
Certainly.
absorb another cut. Not
I
that
thought
it's
they
not
were
possible.
considering giving it up,
I-
but they're
yeah.
absorbing it. So
Well, it's on their agenda for Thursday night, so I don't know us that they're recommending that those items.
They're gonna be hard pressed to run. How much more?
I like that approach. I didn't see it on the side.
Yeah, and we're sitting here going, I mean,
Not-
obviously,
Yeah, like we need to just vote on
there sounds like there was, I mean, you
the
had
board
mentioned
of health budget.
we-
Yeah,
the 8,000 sounds like there's been a few board members on both boards that talked about that, the munis training. So add that to whatever, but really the elephant in the room
right.
is this thing, because the other ones we could pay for if we just said we're gonna spend the 14. All right, there's 8
And
gone.
yeah, just also to the, it was 2,000, also you talked about the select board talked about the January 30th meeting as well. So just want to make sure we count for that.
Administrating?
No, 2,000 or everybody can just stand.
Oh, right.
So I didn't want to get that.
Yes, thank you. So. All right, let's assume that 14,000 is used on these couple of these smaller items. We've got the 204 in front of us.
Oh, 154, right?
Yeah, 100.
Okay,
Right.
I think 50 would come from removing nursing and the show from the budget, right? So those two line items. So the gap is 154.
I don't see Neshoba anywhere right here. I want to make sure that that money.
I just budget.
I love
it's
it.
budget, it's budget.
Okay.
So Barry and Cynthia's point. If you ask me to vote right now for the Board of Health proposal, I can't vote until I know what we have to cut. Because it's not,
How we fund it.
right, because like, I'm inclined to say yes, but yeah, that's contingent on what else we're pulling out.
Right.
So I mean, I think we sort of have to at least identify a straw horse for 150.
Right, we can't really vote on a.
Well, we could vote a conditional on.
Yeah, are there any currently budgeted positions that have not been filled that we're totally agreeing for? And that's,
Facilities director.
Well, yeah, I know it's not the rail, but that's, that's.
Treasurer for the 20th year. No, that's treasurer.
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 That was my.
Right, I mean, if we can fund this with the position that we haven't filled.
So on the cherry sheets, do we know what was the governor's increase?
First pass.
I think it was
240.
net, because there was an increase in assessments, there's somewhere around $100,000. Mostly in chapter 70 money. So is there gonna be something there? Probably. But we're not gonna know before town meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, we're assuming there's not going to be any revenue to offset this, but there's going to be some revenue. Maybe it might not be 242,000, but it's not going to be nothing.
But we can't use that to fund it for.
You use unknown revenue.
Yeah.
I mean, your cherry sheet money could come in and help pay for if we decide as our boards to want that. The admin assistant and everything else, we can come back to the special and present that piece for the remainder of the year. So really, if we're just looking at the director at this position right now, that's the money we're after, right? We can't really, or are you committing this money to what? I mean, the Board of Health is presented to it now because we are up against the clock on the show. When really, it would be nice to wait for the cherry sheets to come in and throw this at special town meeting, right? When we have the cherry sheet money comes in and we say, okay, we've got money now to start this
But then we're already engaged, yeah, then we're engaged.
We're engaged in the show, but how do you crack that? What's the nut to get out of the show? We say we're terminating our contract right now. That's what I don't know what that is. What's that? I know it is. What's the penalty to get out of it? Let's say we're done.
We're out of last year.
So we signed for 2 years and then we say after 6 months, we're done.
So, generally, to Mark's point, we just pay them this $100,000.
I think that we can't. What you just said, Gary, to hold off until the session, you see what happens. It's an insurance policy. Even if it's not, you prove it at the special, it's still gonna take us some time to hire somebody, get somebody on it. So even if we have to pay Neshoba for a year and a half, personally, I'd rather pay them and know that we're gonna have a service to be able to provide for the town. And even if we shut them out, we still have to pay it.
Well, you have to.
Can't do that. We don't know what the contract language
Well,
says.
that's my fear is if it's just the 50,000, I'm more okay with that than if there's something in that contract that says plus fees that we would have accrued with the contract. Like, that's scary language.
So who signs the contract? So,
Oh, you gotta spend. That's the contract from the show, but
If you signed the last one,
it's going in.
I signed one.
I don't remember to be honest, I don't remember it. I'll look it up.
So I mean, that's a factor.
Has the facilities position been filled?
Excuse me?
Has the facilities position been filled that's out there?
No, this is one of those things we keep kicking.
Is it,
It's 4 years, I think we've kicked
is
it.
it approved in this budget?
yeah.
For how much?
I'm just trying to eyeball that.
It's like 80.
How much more money is
It's
it?
85.
Is it?
88. Yeah.
Well, it's halfway there. But it seems like we can't make a decision until we've seen the contract, because
Right.
who knows what it says? Because to your point, who knows what it says? And I think us saying, well, we'll do X, Y, and Z with them and.
We need to run that scenario by.
Well, let's run the scenario. All right, let's assume it's 50,000 a year.
Fair enough.
Contract language speaks to that. We don't have to worry about the fee part side of it. It's 50,000 a year. We're going to eat $100,000 over 2 years, right?
Well, yeah, for as long as we're not using this.
Right, so it could, right, so a year and a half or whatever, we're gonna use some service, but we terminate the contract, what's our clause to get out of it? Not good business, I don't even like talking about it. Because if you ever wanted to go back,
You burn that bridge.
that bridge has been burned, so that's the scary side of this. But I don't know, if it's presented that way to Neshoba, say, hey, here's what we're up against. We realize we made between now and then, we need something to cover us. This is how we're going to do it. That would be more understandable, but those conversations would have to happen.
But how does that even, but that doesn't solve the problem of where to get the money. So suppose we go to the show and say, yep, 50,000, no fees, and they say, sure, it's all awesome. These guys still need 150.
Oh, well, I'm saying the cherry sheet money will come in and that special we've got. We can talk about this then.
And we hope then, yeah.
And if we spent the 50, we're no longer 155. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was just trying to think a little crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So we need to, we're not gonna get the cherry sheet until we get the cherry sheet. Right? We need to look at the contract with Neshoba. We need to take a good hard look at opportunities within the operational budget and have a conversation with the budget subcommittee for the school tonight, just to see if it's in the realm. Is this a conversation we can even have?
But we need a decision by, well,
The longer we wait, to your point. It holds up the high.
well, that whole process can, that the PDing and all that can happen. We meet next week. So,
And the personnel advisory committee can.
but you guys need to meet.
Rate that now.
Next Tuesday.
We decide, yes, that's the PD we think.
Right, that
be
should
assigned.
happen anyway.
That should be rated
I
now.
think we know the town is already approved to move forward with this. So I think that part of it, we can agree on. This is all about money right now. Well, I think every one of us, well, maybe not. I think the majority of the boards here, though, of the members would say, if that number wasn't 14,000 and it was 250, we would probably be agreeing to this, majority wise. So,
I think we should have a joint meeting next week. And because we gotta be able to figure out what the contract is in a week. You know, see what we can do with the schools and then see where we are in a week, because we're burning time.
I mean, I know they've put a lot of work into this and they're up against the clock here too, you know, the finance team. So
When's that, basically that drop dead date?
March 27th.
March 27th. So that was, I mean, that's
We're up against it.
so. If we're going to meet again, I know we have an agenda already put together, but specifically, what do we want? What we're looking for. We don't need to all sit here and be reviewing a contract. We need it reviewed already, saying, here's our out. It's going to cost you $100,000 to get out of the contract. And like I said, I'm personally not comfortable with just coming out of a contract. I think the show should be made aware of this potentially could happen. We're going through a transition, but we're willing to at least pay the contract. And
I think we need to have town council look at the contract
yeah,
before we can
certainly
weigh any scenario, because there might be language in there where it's totally,
yeah.
totally off the table, that option.
It's done
With exclusivity of their services.
Right, yeah.
So
So we're gonna have to get that. I was just thinking of the possibility of crafting a motion right now in the affirmative, saying that would move. We're gonna have to get together and move either way. So I was thinking maybe we make a motion that we support the presentation of the Board of Health.
we're trying to find a way to make it work.
Subject to the finance plan that was acceptable to both the finance committee and the Board of Health. And what are we? Select board.
Yes. Well, the other side of this is,
But either way, we're gonna have to get together to approve that finance plan, so we can just take that motion out of there, I guess.
Yeah, I agree.
The
There's no point in just a sense of the.
Right.
the not popular version of this is to say, let's go with Neshoba on July 1st, still look at this contract, push this out, get all the PD, get everything in place, and then it becomes our 2025 budget item. And we're a year into Neshoba, we're gonna pull out anyway, then it's only costing us, if you will, 50,000.
But we're missing the whole cost of liability to Evelyn's point. That's really kind of scary.
There, and that's a vote. I mean, that's one of your concerns, and you brought it up too. I mean, it's the cream at in my soup.
And is that allowable given the town meeting?
I don't think there was a timeline, so,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
But, oh, no, I don't like, believe me.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, I know.
This state, the Board of Health has come to us with a viable plan that they want to move forward.
If we say we wanna go with Neshoba for another 2 years, is that automatic, or I think somebody mentioned that their board has to approve it?
Yeah, so
So the 26th, like, I don't know what the timing is on, if we say we meet next week, and then we say, okay, we wanna go with Neshoba, what's the timeline from there to know if they even let us continue for 2 years? Because they could still come back and say no,
Right, that's your point.
right? Because we've already told them we're done as of the end of June.
They could, because they picked up another community, so they're not expecting us, so.
Right.
all right,
There's probably not a lot of time to. Get that vote.
So, it shouldn't be quarterly. I assume it's end of March. They would make that decision.
we've got to,
So I would also request that the Board of Health go back and see if there's anything that can be cut from their $205,000 ask. Can
The initial
we really
year.
need the administrative support
right now, the first year.
for the first year, right? I mean, the vehicle stipend is $600 a month. That seems high compared to what we're giving other stipends, right? Let's look at this and see if we can get that 205 number down, right? The public health nurse is 20, but we're paying 15 now. And you're saying we're not even potentially using that much, if we're using a nurse for $35 an hour for 2 days a week or 2 hours a week, that's much less than
It costs 3,500 a year. You're right.
Yeah, so if this number can come down, then maybe there's a better chance of finding bridging the gap. Right.
I mean, your ask is here. I think where we can get to is this year, splitting it up over 2 years, I mean, a lot more will be clear then, I'm sure, too. I mean, but I think we'll have a better idea. You see what we're facing right now.
Hire the director, figure out the administrative and.
Yeah, and I also think, the revenue hasn't really been taken into consideration. Maybe rightfully so, maybe not. I think it's there. I think it needs to be paid attention to. I think it's going to be implemented one way or the other. If we have to charge double fees, we charge double fees. We want this health director, you want this department, like it's going to happen.
Well, I think the director position will be getting those fees as soon as they come on, they start doing the work. By the end of the year, they might have, you might have, now you'll see some type of revenue stream. So, wow, they paid for themselves plus.
As of July 1, it kicks in.
Yeah.
It's been voted.
Yeah, I can see, to Mark's point about the public health nurse, cutting that to a more realistic number, some of the other expenses. I think that just pours into that admin support piece. Because I think that's like asking a part-time person to support all that's going to be going on there. Getting the department up and running.
Yeah, we're going to need the admin support.
I
It's
think
kind of
the admin
attached.
support is probably even more important at that point in time to get things up and running.
So my point was if we could cut this now and get it into, figure out how to fit something into the budget now. Then when you actually have revenue flow, we can reevaluate this potentially in November and say, yes, we can support something off of your revenue flow outside of the normal budget.
Plus the cherry sheets.
Yeah.
To Kevin's point though, then this simple solution is just add $200,000 worth into revenue. Whatever the number it is you want to add it in, and we're done. You get your department.
By changing your fees.
By using-
But on it, we're talking fees in the local receipt. So if you want the department, if it's gonna cost whatever the number is that you want to go with, we just add that to local receipts and then we monitor the local receipts. And then we'll let you know how it goes. If not, we come under, we'll be tapping into the reserve fund.
I say it's a portion of what's estimated here for receipts, I think
That's what I was trying to,
Either way, there's gonna be receipts. If they're saying that the receipt's gonna cover, then that's that's a simple solution. Walk out here, you gotta help Port Health Department, all set.
So the receipts, the numbers that I heard tonight were anywhere between 100,000 and 300,000.
Well-
And if we're doing more frequent inspections, it's gonna be 100 to 300 times X.
And we control the process.
I like playing that game.
I just don't like relying.
I don't either.
That's gonna be a revenue stream.
We can go back to
Just
the
like
example we give you.
a
I get it.
revenue stream to the ambulance. It's not gonna pay for the services.
Well, can we reference
Let's
what,
get it out.
It's going to subsidize it.
can we reference what the building commissioner's done, the land use department, and his fee schedule?
I'm sorry, I didn't get it.
The land use department, so it's from Mullins department, the fee, that's kind of a model to look at what the fees actually pay for in that department. That's a proven model. So
so if I may, more or less, it's a proven model, but it also fluctuates with the economy, right?
Yeah.
So what I learned
It's
through,
great.
yeah, up and down, and Sean, the former treasurer, as we were working the adjustment in the fee schedule, Steve had retired. So Sean and I were working the adjustment in the fee schedule, and it nearly doubled. Originally, the residential permits were $7 per thousand, we went up to $13 per thousand. Commercial was $10 per thousand, we went up to $13 per thousand. So we doubled on residential and increased by a third on commercial. Revenues went from about 350 to 600,000 the first year, so it's significant. The following year, we did more inspections, we issued more permits, and we generated less revenue because COVID projects were smaller, right? People were doing bathrooms, basements, and porches, decks, pools. So we didn't see big construction projects. So it does fluctuate, and Steve and Sean both had said you can't count on.
And that's why treasurers hate it.
Yes, you can't count on the revenue because you don't know what the economy's gonna.
Yeah.
But I do think that you would see a return, what that will be. Yeah. I'm not a forecaster by any means.
You could probably.
But could I ask a question, Ed? Did you not increase your fees at some point in the last year and a half?
2021, Matthew, I think is the year that we did the fee increase.
And how much of that increase in revenue was due to the fee increase as opposed to just, more inspections, less inspections, bigger projects?
We saw a significant increase, I would say. Less than half and more than a third in revenue.
So I'm trying to connect the dots between that model and what we're looking at here, given that I don't think that it's not like we have a current stream of revenue and we're increasing the fees. It's like it's a whole new one, right?
It's going from 0 to 100.
Well, yes, but also it's in line with the towns around us, which I think is the reason that you increase the fees on the building and the building permits.
Correct, that's a good point, Matthew. We did do a modeling of the other surrounding towns. So can I, Kevin, on your presentation, there's two sorts of fees. There's the annual fees and the one-time fees. What are they? The annual fees are like the food inspections and the one-times are like the Title V's.
Title V, septic permit reviews, and construction reviews.
So those are much more varied.
They are. Well, of course, the one-time fees are more variable. We do have some insight onto what they might be based on what planning and zoning is doing, what type of commercial developments happening in town.
Sorry.
No.
We're trying to figure out the contract.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Well, I mean, the thing is, I think as far as the uncertainty of building fees and things like that, we do know we have X amount of restaurants in town. We do know that we're gonna have those annual inspections consistently going forward. We can rely on the list fees as just a number to gauge, and, to Kevin's point, Mr. Baker's point, we can increase those fees to help compensate, to fund this department in this position. So that will give us some idea.
But that's the 36,000. It's the annual.
Okay.
Fees.
I mean, I'd like to explore a little bit more about Anthony, what you had mentioned, the feasibility of that, of working it the way that you had said.
What is that?
The revenue.
Oh, add revenue.
Yeah.
And always add revenue.
You can always have revenue, and then
It's just a matter of collecting it.
right.
When we collect it or it doesn't get done.
Well, yeah, but someone needs to request it, or
When was the last time the rev that it was increased?
so
we don't even ship all one.
the show sets those rates.
Yeah.
So I have no problems balancing this with revenue. I'm just concerned that we don't really have a good floor for what the revenue is. All right, we're saying it's between 100 and 300 and their number is 250. So they're on the higher end of this 242. They're on the higher end of the scale.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not something that's easy to balance. And I don't necessarily understand how they came up with these numbers to say that we can say they're real, or we can believe how trustworthy how much trust we can put in these numbers being real without going back. I think we need to look at this again with a little more detail on the revenue side so that we can safely say that.
Well, be as conservative, be real conservative.
Well, I think,
Real conservative is 36,000. Right.
Well, there you go. There's it. Now let's work down from that number.
yeah, I mean, a lot, there's a lot in kind of the revenue projections, and a lot of that, I would think it would kind of tie to some of the revenue projections we have for the building department as well, right? If we're having health inspections for, new bedrooms and new construction, plan review sheets for that, that really would align with revenue from the building department as well, right? Somehow we've done any kind of reconciliation of both health inspections versus what, that may be a way to try and validate the model a little bit.
I mean, barring a contract that we're gonna look at, what are we trying to push?
I don't even know if we were covering in a contract, and we expired and they took us on for a year, so. Looking at this, if the general consensus is you want it, it's either increase fees or reduce costs. Cut costs somewhere else. It's two simple solutions that either way, I think, personally, I think you guys can come to a conclusion tonight, increase the fees and cut the costs.
Oh, good.
The projected revenue fees, the quantities were taken, almost the FY 24 quantities, I think we're taken almost directly from the town report that was written in 2020, which is like the only report we could find where Neshoba actually called out how many inspections they did. And then moving forward, it's based on just economic growth of the town, 5% units increase, what's happening at 550, what's going to happen in the mill building. And a lot of stuff probably hasn't even been taken into account.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you're looking a couple of years out of that.
Just keep in mind with 550 or Northern Bank or the mill building, I can tell you nothing's happening for 2 years. Yeah, that's how long sewer is going to happen.
It's tied to the sewer.
So just keep that in mind. I know everybody talks about 550.
Don't bank on it.
Yeah.
Well, not this,
Sure,
that doesn't help us
trouble.
this year with this math problem, right? Yeah, that's. We're looking at a normal, if we knew a fee schedule tied into exactly what Neshoba does for us, and there's a math problem there to be had.
Well, if you were saying the revenue was 100 to 300,000, is that, well, so if you did 100, and
Makes
then the cherry sheets had at least enough to cover that difference,
throughout the year.
you're at least covering that 154.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of variation. I think if we're gonna come up with a number, we look at the projections that the Board of Health already did for revenue and try and validate that model, right? I mean, I think that's a variable.
Just trying to be on the conservative
Yeah,
side.
no, I low end of it.
Yeah, but is the low end 100,000 or 36?
I thought it was 150. I think somebody said it like 150.
do you have that?
Yeah, I think they stated 150 to 300. I think I misspoke earlier when I said.
So, I mean, do we want to decide on this tonight? Do we want to do some more research and homework?
I just need to know, where do we get a week from now? Where do we get to? Where are we at? What changes?
We can make some cuts to the fire department once Tom leaves.
Hey, I already got nominated to be the health. Put my head back on.
The treasurer?
Thank you.
I mean, I don't, unless we can sit here and say something's gonna change, what are we getting? What are we waiting?
So, personally, I would like to see, if we can get either dig down on more numbers or figure out if we can actually cut this 205 number that they're asking down, right? And what a real number, the public health nurse.
Well, we can cut it down, Mark. I mean,
I would like them to cut it down and come back and say, no, we don't really need 205, we can do it with 150, for example, or whatever the number is, and then, and then we can support it with these fees based on something, or we can, if they get it down to 150, we're cutting out in the show, but we're down to 100 that we're asking in fees, which is something that's much more comfortable to say that we're going to generate than to guess that we're going to cover 205 in fees.
I think that's where we're at right now.
So
we're talking that way. If we just hire the health director, and then we kind of wait for some of these things to play out before special, then we're talking about health.
Well, we have
director.
to have a nurse. We just don't know. We don't have to have a nurse at this 20,000.
Right,
level.
you could have an on-call nurse.
Right.
35.
Right, but I'm saying,
So that
use 150 as the number.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is if they can get this number down to 150, I'm much more comfortable with it, and I'd like to give them an opportunity to go through and do that. Right? If we're down to 150, then we're actually covering a difference of 100 if we're taking out the 50 that we're already allocating. So that seems like something we can safely say we can cover in fees.
Right. Yeah, so Gary, I think we can make progress in a week. We can do what Mark's suggesting. We can have town council the contract. I think we can get some more information in a week. We're still going to be guessing to some degree, but perhaps less.
I think we can get, so we can sharpen our pencil and probably get to 175 pretty easily. I think we can still do that and maintain, get a high quality candidate.
Let's take a vote on 175 back. Let's do, I mean, time's of the essence, right? We've already said that. So let's take a vote tonight on 175. Add it to revenue and,
I still think we need to meet.
well, we are meeting.
Well, we are, I know they are too, but I think, maybe, Monday we meet. We can do 2 in a row, but we can meet at third, we can post an agenda. You have a meeting Tuesday?
We could go to your meeting.
Go to your
Tuesday.
meeting.
Yeah, the other thing,
Fine, too.
need to put damper on this. We have to talk about sustainability of this model too. So once we pull out, we're out.
Yeah.
Chances of going back are
I mean, so when the
probably
town,
less than 100%.
but when the town voted to do this,
Town voted to
we
do
knew
that,
there was
but
gonna be a
town
cost.
also didn't hear any financials that go along with the vote. They heard, yeah, we want to pull out, we want to do this savings
So,
thing. There was no numbers there. It was on the consent agenda. There was no discussion at all. Now we're having the discussion, put numbers to it. And how does this model that we're having trouble supporting at a $200,000 expense level grow to 300,000 the following year, grow to 325 the year after, go to 350 the year after? That's keeping that body count down.
well, we control
Because if you go to
that,
the full 15, you're talking $1 million salaries. Yeah.
but we control that.
Yeah.
Well,
What are you talking about? Build out?
anything moving forward, we control.
Control it, but at what expense?
Well, but after a year, after a year, it's not going to be a model. Like, we're going to have revenue examples, and it's going to be a much more tangible thing, which we can decide whether or not we want to expand this department. I mean, I think your concerns are completely valid, but I'm not sure that any of us is advocating for going to $1 million without the commensurate revenue coming in to balance that.
I don't want to sound like we're going to go to that 15 people,
No, I
whatever
don't
it
think
is.
we're ever gonna do that. I think.
No, but I know I see your point.
But it's sustainability, whether it's one person or 5 people. It's being able to sustain that in a budget where we're only collecting an additional 2.5% on the levy every year. We're not seeing a huge revenue growth anywhere else. How do we fund this?
So yours is kind of like a safer grant argument. Yeah, we're gonna get funded 75%, 100%, and 75%.
5 years from now.
Exactly. So that's kind of your argument right now.
Yeah.
Okay. We might be able to shuffle the deck a little bit.
Year 1, maybe they'll shuffle the deck. What gives year 2?
Right, but I think,
We're gonna have a lot more data.
Right.
Right, and in year 2, when we're approaching this from the whole budget point of view, I mean, remember, if 4 months ago we were looking for 150,000, going, these guys found
Rounding error.
yeah, and the thing is, and remember, just like the ambulance, you know, this is help, and to the point, you're right that when the town voted to pull against us, they didn't have the numbers, but they also didn't have the numbers that inspections weren't happening. You know, I think if we told the town that the restaurants aren't being inspected, and we said, well, we can look at that for 2 more years.
So just to play devil's advocate on there, let's just say that we fund this department at $175,000, $200,000, then you find out that they can't do all the inspections because they need another body. That's Steve's argument, right? So now we're in for 300,000, where we have to come up with that, or they need 2 more bodies, right? Where are we coming up with those extra bodies in this model?
And you live with this for FY24, because the budget is set at that point. You don't go back to the well. Right? Right?
I go back to we're getting served 8 hours a week now. We're gonna have a full-time employee that's talented. I mean, if we hire the person that seems like this job.
Well, when you say we have a person for 8 hours a week, we have Jim Gareffi in the office for 8 hours a week. But they're doing inspections for us.
4 hours. Their statement is that they're dedicating 8 hours a week to the town of Littleton. Not in the office. I'd argue that I don't think Jim's in the office.
Well, if you consider, the Board of Health is telling us. 8 hours a week. So let's go off of what's being told of
With
us.
all due respect to Jim Greffy, when we did this equation early on, Jim Greffy made the statement to myself and Marge, who held the town planner, that Littleton has outpaced their services, and that was back in 2020. Jim Greffy is in our office for 1 to 2 hours, once or twice a week, and the rest of the time he's in. So the other thing that we should know is the position can be graded, and we'll actually know what the salary range is, right? Which we currently don't know. They just throw it in. We don't know what the grade level of it is.
Right.
It would be probably a 16 regular department head, so. There's a salary range up to
Yesterday.
117 at a grade 10.
Plus benefits. That's why that number came out at 140. Right.
And then you had benefits.
So it sounds like we're leaning towards the select board posting next Tuesday and turning our meetings to join. Or
Yeah, I think unless there's something, I'm still stuck in where do we get to between now and next Tuesday? That we can't get to right now. Is something, what's the decision? We're waiting on Board of Health to tell us, okay, we'll go with 165. We're still going to be dealing with a large number, whatever it is, 150 to 200,000. How are we going to manage this if we're going to approve it? So, go ahead.
I would be way to trust the people you have in place to actually execute and make it happen.
Excuse me?
You should add the revenue in and trust the people you have in place to actually execute and make this happen.
And so, I would go with the 200 in expenses less the 50 that's built in. So you're talking a net of 150.
Right.
Okay.
And we need to find. I understand the need and the troubles they're having with the show. I just get the gut feeling that we're going to have a lapse of service here in the short run. Maybe in the long run, it's all going to work out. In the short run, I think there's a gap, and we have no way to fill that gap right now.
But once again, we're making,
trust those
that's not a finance committee decision or a select board really. This is,
Absolutely.
we have an elected board that
Gave us the recommendation.
would go into that, whatever mode they have to.
But whatever that decision is, has to be funded, and then it comes back to us.
Yeah.
So whether that decision is going through the contract with Neshoba, negotiating something, with Neshoba that says that will pay you X, you be our backup, basically.
So I think
I don't know if that can happen.
the two boards, each member has to be able to say, are you willing to, the model, are you willing to accept the fact that you believe that the fees are going to cover this the first year? And that's what we're concerned with right now. Going forward, we control how fast that department grows, right? With the Board of Health, we control how fast that pedal goes down, what are services, additional services they present that they need. Right now, are you comfortable with what was presented? That the fees this first year are going to cover the cost?
so
I know, Steve, you're not, you won't be, your brain can't even get there because of the, you're a treasurer and I get it. And I think as our two boards, what's our comfort level? And if there's more than, I'm more comfortable with taking everything into account, the advice, of the Board of Health, and the nature of what Alvin brought up, the criticality of the potential health hazard, the increase in services, I'm not even going to call it a leap of faith because I think there is a proven model of fees that we see that it's at the lower end of the range that we're looking to cover here.
I mean, I guess
I'm comfortable. I mean, that's just me and my comfort level here, but I know every one of us has a different comfort level.
yeah, I'm not sure if I am, and only because and but I don't know what we can do to validate it, right? I mean, I think I was comfortable up until you said that we pulled it from the last available information from the Children's Board of Health, right? If there was a way to validate around what we're planning for housing starts or something that
That was actually, it was taken from a report that the building commissioner has to submit to HUD,
Okay,
as far as new housing starts.
You said from 2020 though,
That was Jim's report taken out of the, Jim's numbers taken out of the
Right.
town
these
report.
revenue numbers.
FY, do you have 23 on there? I don't know if you do. But moving forward, I think it was 36, 38 new housing starts, for FY 24. Those are numbers that were reported looking at forward.
okay, so they were forward-looking numbers back when you reported back then, it wasn't for that year, okay.
Yeah, I don't think we had the detail. We just had the summary number, the 242.
Oh, yeah,
There
that
was
was the big spreadsheet. It was all sent.
Yeah, there was I can send it out, we did get this probably about a month ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally, I'm not comfortable voting for this without your board's comfort. I'm not. If you voted no, I'd be like, well, this is not, but it doesn't sound like you're even comfortable yet making a decision. Right? I mean, you're feeling the same thing we're all feeling.
Well, we're missing two of our members, and I think this is a decision I'd love to see our full board have. And so I'd love to see us, I would opt for us to wait the week to get a better number from them, to get a little bit more sense of the contract and have our full board meet. I will say I'm inclined to vote for it just because of the criticality of the need. But that's just, but the concerns I'm hearing are valid.
So what can we vote on tonight if we leave that alone? What else are we voting on?
Well, I mean, we can vote the capital.
You can vote, yeah.
Well, you can vote the other $10,000 worth of items.
Yeah, so let's talk about that real quick. The other items on here with the 14,191, is there other items on here that the boards?
Well, if we're trying to find money for this, why would you be? I mean, if we're not gonna use it for munis, then use that 14,191 towards the 159.
Are we in agreement though to use it for munis or no?
I mean,
There's a couple board.
I'd even ask, is 8,000 enough? I mean,
Alicia has said that some money already sitting in credits with munis. This is just gonna add enough that she thinks will pay for it, so.
and if we needed additional training, then we do have some continuing ed money or professional development money as well, right? That we budgeted.
Is there anything in the accountant's budget? Not certain.
No.
The 8,000 should be.
So the only money that I'd be willing to move is the 8,000 towards munis. Right? If we're gonna take anything out of that 14, I'd just say move that 8,000 to munis and then just leave the 6191 at that.
Well, we voted in our January meeting to move 2,000 for sustainability, so we're not going to support the sustainability that we voted on.
It's an outstanding request.
We voted at our January meeting to give to sustainability $2,000. But it wasn't part of the normal budget cycle because they're not in the budget book because they've never had any funding source.
Did we vote it to put it in the budget
We voted to give it,
or
well,
to give it to them? Because it's a difference.
I'm not sure the exact.
It's kind of like an earmark.
Yeah.
It's kind of like an earmark.
So when we talked about it, we talked about making them like the Shade Tree Committee.
Yeah,
the Disability
right.
Commission that had an item in the budget because they don't currently.
Right.
So
We've got another board. Let's see are you guys comfortable on using some of that 14,000 to pay for a few of these items?
Yeah, I personally am fine. I mean, munis, I think is critical, right? And then, I mean,
Is it? You advocated for it, but I mean.
The 8,000?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, then I still stick with that though.
Well, I mean, we can do a motion. Somebody wants
Yeah,
to.
let's see what that is.
Yeah, no, I mean, the munis thing, I think, I mean, again, it's important. I mean, sustainability. I don't know the background on what the $2,000 sustainability thing was from your.
So if I may, Jim, similar to the Shade Tree Committee, for instance, or some other committees, disability committee, where we've given them some funding, whether it be for training or to do stuff.
Okay.
To give them a little more teeth. So we voted that.
So
It would make sense for us to do something to extend the
Okay.
I mean, economic development's another one that is trying to do
We've talked
something.
repeatedly for a while.
What economic development, it just hasn't.
Anyone else have questions?
Yeah, we need
Those three items? So, yes. Yeah, I think we feel comfortable with that motion. That's good.
We'll do two separate motions.
8 and 2.
Okay.
I need a motion from someone on the side. You guys will be your
Select
own.
board, select board voted to
Right.
allocate $8,000 for object 530160 from Eunice training and $2,000 for, there's no item number on here, for sustainability as voted the January 30th, 2023 select board meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I am in favor.
Thank you.
Who was that?
That was me. Actually, I meant forced to do a roll call with something to say.
Yeah.
We'll do a roll call vote. Matthew?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Charlie?
Aye.
Cindy? And I'm an aye. It passes unanimously. All right.
I moved that. What did he say? The 8,000 for units for item 00011,357 and 2,000 for sustainability with no number.
Second.
2,000.
All in favor?
We don't have to do a roll call. We start out here.
Aye.
Well, actually, they do.
So that would just leave now $2,747.
What's that?
For barbecue.
$2,747. After the latest initial tech assessment numbers.
All right. So we need to,
Okay.
oh yes, capital. Let's talk real quick. I know we didn't, I think we were.
We have a bigger font.
Definitely. Oh, that's pretty.
Probably page 2.
Yeah. Yeah, we haven't changed on that since.
No.
It's our priorities are great. And the only question there was really whether you need help pass the special. Right? No, I mean, nothing's changed except for now we know for sure that.
Right.
Purchase for the director. Right.
You were going to deal with the Show Tech to have their HVAC students do something with their HVAC units at the top of the high school room. So that would replace every other year.
Yeah, we've obviously looked at this and came up with this. Someone I'll let the FinCom make a motion or any
Do we need
changes.
to vote again?
Yeah, well, I don't think we voted on, but we haven't voted on informational capital.
Yeah, Ranger.
Same discussed it, but we hadn't made a vote on it because we weren't sure before we have to have it done. But I really heard help, but now that's. And I was building this down.
Who's buying the Ranger?
2011, right? Who's the Ranger?
Who's buying the?
Parks and Rec.
Park and Rec is replacing the Ranger.
They're replacing the Ranger with, it's an F-150 that's gonna replace the Maverick, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, lightning. All right, so it's not Ranger for $60,000 now, it's,
It's electric vehicle.
all right, never mind. It's replacement of the Ranger, it's not one for one, it's not another Ranger.
Good, Rangers.
Yeah, did anyone have a question, any items or? I know we discussed this at prior meetings.
Anybody want to talk about Indian Hill? I just haven't talked about it in a few weeks.
Separation anxiety.
If there have questions on funding, I can, my answer here is.
Actually, nice that we're able to do that, 657. Bring our debt service down.
Yeah. If I mean, if no one has questions, I would. Ask for a motion to. Recommend or approve the capital plan as presented.
I move that we approve the capital plan as presented totaling 1.7 million.
Oh.
Or but
Well, I think the total's 2, 4, 2, 3, 3.
Yeah, I think a motion would be just maybe. Move that the FinCom approve the capital
2024.
2024 proposed capital study as presented by the town administrator, or the town administrator's recommended capital plan.
And a slash finance, right?
okay,
We just added it. Bylaw says town administrator.
okay, yes,
Okay. Go ahead.
so moved.
Second. All in favor of approving and recommending the capital plan as recommended by the town administrator? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right,
Move the select board vote to approve the fiscal 2024 proposed capital improvement plan projects budget as recommended by the town administrator / finance director.
Second,
It's been moved in second. I'm gonna do a roll call vote. Matthew,
Matthews, yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Chuck,
Goes yes.
Cindy.
yes.
I'm a yes, okay. All right, we spent 1.7 at least, right? 2.433, excuse me. That's actually a pretty healthy capital, is it not? Is it?
yeah. I should free cash.
So everything left is the Board of Health.
Yeah, which was, I think, it's hard, unfortunately, to come in here and make a decision last minute with the presentation where we're being presented. We've had now 2-3 months to digest everyone's capital and everyone's operational requests that come to us. We're getting theirs right now, and we wanted to have a decision tonight. It probably wasn't realistic anyway. So I think that being said, I think we did the best we could, but I think by next week, hopefully we have some more information, we can make an educated decision. Maybe someone can brainstorm.
So
Come up with-
joint Tuesday.
Yeah, join for Tuesday, and it'll be
You're
FinCom's
not
meeting.
in town, I'm not in town.
Yeah, I have to
Do
do
this.
Yeah, I'll be
I
zooming
can't.
in as well. You can't? Still gonna be a member short. I mean, that happens. Is our board?
I'm not sure I can make Tuesday depending what time it is. If it's early, if.
Well, we know it.
If it's the first thing on the agenda, I can do it, but I have.
Oh, I see.
No, we're gonna make you wait.
You'll be freezing.
Yeah,
No, I mean, I just. I have
They
a work
normally
meeting
close for
that I gotta go
7.
to.
yeah, I'm gonna plan to post for 7 and just we're planning on live meeting, we're planning on just.
Okay, I have to check. I'm not sure that I can make 7.
Can you post earlier?
It's fine, earlier is fine. I don't know. Does anyone else have a conflict earlier?
How early?
6:30.
6:30?
PM.
Oh,
All right, we do that, yeah, because then we can have we have a light agenda anyway, so. we can,
You put it up front. I
I have a 7 o'clock meeting I have to call into, so
feel
if
that.
we can be done in half an hour.
I mean, if
Okay,
not.
well, let's send this expire for that.
And let's try to get as much done. Notwithstanding open meeting law, let's get as much done ahead of time as possible. I think it's not a violation of OML to get refined budget numbers from them or to find anything else about the contract.
But any of that information should come through like a single point of contact, whether it's the finance director or the town administrator, assistant town administrator. Not all of us broadcast.
Yeah, 100%.
And you're not gonna be here, I think, if you have anything to say, no, I can all right. So regardless, Mark, if you had to leave early, we have an idea of what you were considering. We still have a quorum.
Right.
It is a big decision number, so hopefully
Try to forgive me this proxy.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Like
Like mine. Yeah.
Matthew, you're available next Tuesday at 6:30?
I will be there.
Are you guys virtual? Is this a full virtual meeting?
Yeah, I'll be virtual.
All right, so it's a full virtual meeting.
Even better.
Yep,
Yeah,
even better.
that's great.
Okay.
I'll be double there.
All right.
2 devices.
We can't get a room anymore, you know?
Do we give any analysis for the board? No.
So I will just say the one thing that we're always missing from this is we still haven't really considered like a sustainability coordinator ever. I know we're not going to, but
Yeah,
there's a lot of grant money out there that we're not going after because we don't hire someone to go after grant money.
Yes, this, we've said the same thing about the next development.
Yep, I know we don't have the money for it. We're trying to sit here and not find the money for it, but because we don't find the money for it, we don't find the grant. So
Do we even want to approach that letter that all the boards got about a way to get the grant writing money?
That's,
This is an agenda.
Okay, yeah.
you know what, I will just say, not, can't vote on it. The letter is, I have to speak with that person because that's really not an option to use CPC for that purpose. It's not an allowable purpose based on the rules and requirements of the Community Preservation Act. So.
And also, did he even talk to Amy and ask her whether she wanted the job?
Well, that's another whole story, yeah.
But Mark makes a great point in that I think in the fullness of time, getting someone to as a full-time grant writer for us would make all kinds of sense and would pay for itself.
That's an area where, although you're competing with other communities, there might be some opportunities for some.
there's free money now that all you have to do is apply through the IRA and that we just aren't even going after because we're not looking. So.
Health director will do that in their spare time.
All right, I'm gonna look for a motion to adjourn.
So.
Second.
Move to adjourn.
By Cindy, seconded by Chuck. Roll call votes. All those in favor, Matthew.
Matthew is a resounding yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Chuck.
Chuck, yes.
Cindy.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. We are adjourned and now the FinCom.
So just before I ask for motion to adjourn, just if a couple of folks can help put the room back together after we adjourn, that'd be awesome. We got baseball board meeting days here. We gotta put the room back together. But with that,
I move we adjourn.
All right. And a second.
I was looking for a motion to put the room back there.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thanks.